Hello everyone, Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn as Hades, the God of the Underworld, Part 3. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
So, did that do him? Zeus questioned. You know, now that you said that, he's going to come out alive, right? Said Poseidon. Is that how it works? Yes. True to his words, the earth rumbled as from the depths of the burning chaos, he emerged. It was Cronus. His form was ruined. Skin, muscles, even his divine essence had been corroded, burned away. The fire of precreation had ravaged him. His once majestic golden body was now a charred ruin, blackened and crumbling. His skull was partially exposed, his ribs visible beneath the torn remains of his divine flesh. But his eyes still burned with power. He was alive. I told you so. Shut up. Zeus and Poseidon did not hesitate. Despite their bickering, they moved faster than light. This was their chance. Cronus was gravely injured, and now it is possible to kill him. Lightning roared in the sky, and the sea howled in fury. Zeus raised his bolt. Poseidon's trident spun in his hands. The air trembled as they lunged forward, weapons glowing with divine destruction. Die, Cronus. But, stop. Hecate's voice pierced the battlefield like a dagger. A voice filled with panic. Zeus and Poseidon flinched. For a single, crucial moment, their instinct screamed at them, and without hesitation, they retreated. And just in time. A single pulse erupted from Cronus' body. A pulse of pure, undiluted authority. The very concept of time shattered. The ground crumbled, not into dust, but into non-existence. The air withered. Mount Orthes shook as reality itself was unmade. The place where Zeus and Poseidon had stood a moment ago was erased. The very matter of the world had decayed to its most primal form, returning to the void before creation. Zeus and Poseidon stared in horror. And before their eyes, Cronus' ruined body was healing. Instantly. Skin, flesh, and divine essence regenerated at terrifying speed. The exposed skull vanished, and the burned muscles reformed. In mere seconds, Cronus stood before them, fully healed. And his power seems to have become even stronger than before. He stared at them and laughed. A deep, resonant chuckle that echoed across the battlefield. He rolled his shoulders, flexing his restored body, as he let out a smirk. That was close. His eyes gleamed with amusement as he lifted his scythe. If I were anyone else, that attack would have erased me entirely. He turned his gaze toward Hecate. You impress me, Witch of the Crossroads. Hecate's breath was ragged. Her hands trembled. What had she just witnessed? That magic wasn't supposed to be something anyone could survive, much less heal from. It reduces their very being before existence itself. So why? Why is he alive, and why has he gotten so much stronger? Zeus's and Poseidon's eyes narrowed. Well, what did you do? Zeus demanded. Cronus chuckled. Then, he tilted his head. Simple. His voice was laced with mockery. I destroyed the future where I died, and selected a parallel timeline where I survived. A silence fell over the battlefield. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hecate stiffened. Their minds raced. Their expressions darkened. Destroyed the future? Select a timeline where he survived? That shouldn't be possible. Hecate was the goddess of magic. Poseidon ruled the seas. Zeus commanded the sky. And yet, none of them could comprehend what Cronus had just done. A technique beyond logic. Beyond cause and effect. Something beyond the fates. An ability to interfere with destiny, something not even the strongest of gods could escape. Cronus smirked at their expressions. Ah, I see. You don't understand. He raised his scythe, his divine weapon, the symbol of his absolute rule over time. Then allow me to enlighten you. His golden aura expanded, warping the space around him. You see, I am time itself. I do not exist as a mere moment. I exist in the past, the present, and all possible futures, all at once. He gestured at his perfectly healed body. That means I can reach into my own future, and alter it to whatever I desire. Zeus gritted his teeth. Poseidon's grip on his trident tightened. Hecate felt cold sweat run down her back. Cronus smiled wider. Every timeline where you won, I will destroy it and create a new one where I emerge victorious. Hearing those words, despair loomed over Hecate, Zeus, and Poseidon. How could they defeat someone who could see the future and alter it to whatever he desires? Do they even have a chance to win? At that moment, when despair was about to root itself in their hearts, 5 immense auras descended upon the battlefield. The air shifted, the earth groaned, and even the warped flow of time seemed to momentarily pause. Then, 5 figures landed beside Hecate, Zeus, and Poseidon. They are the 5 underworld river gods. Phlegethon, the river of fire, his presence a raging inferno, the heat of his soul capable of melting divine steel. Poseidon, the river of wailing, whose essence carried the sorrow of every soul who had ever suffered. Acheron, the river of pain, his aura a crushing weight that brought even gods to their knees. Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, an existence so eerie that her mere presence threatened to erase thoughts and memories. Styx, the river of oaths, her divine presence an embodiment of unbreakable bonds and divine law. Cronus smirked, eyes gleaming with amusement as the river gods arrived. Ah, I foresaw this as well. Phlegethon's flames roared. The hell do you mean you foresaw this? It was Hecate who answered, her fists clenched. Be careful. He can see and alter the future. The 5 river gods stiffened, their eyes widening. Cronus let out a low chuckle. So, even the great rivers of the underworld tremble before time? Before they could react, he twirled his scythe, and then he vanished, reappearing in front of Acheron in an instant. His scythe swung downward, a strike not aimed at the present, but at the moment of the past, where Acheron had already been struck. Even if he dodges, he will still get cut. Acheron knew this, so he didn't bother trying to defend. Instead, he decided to counter. His aura exploded outward, a tidal wave of suffering and agony that clashed with Cronus' authority. The air trembled as their powers warred. But in the end, Acheron paled in comparison to Cronus, and was being overwhelmed. Then, just as Acheron was about to be defeated, Phlegethon roared. A pillar of flames erupted beneath Cronus, engulfing him in fire hot enough to turn gods to ash. But Cronus did not burn. He had already seen this outcome and altered it, creating a future where he was not harmed. Just like that, the fire vanished before it could consume him. Futile. With a golden blur, Cronus appeared behind Phlegethon, scythe already swinging. However, a fraction of a second before the attack landed, Lethe whispered. Her voice was echoing through the abyss, and a shroud of nothingness descended over Cronus. The Titan of Time faltered. For the first time in countless eons, his mind went blank. He forgot what he was doing. Forgot his own attack. Forgot where he stood. Immediately, the Titan King stumbled. And in that instant, Poseidon struck. The river of wailing raised his hand, and a wave of sorrow and suffering surged forward, a tide of divine torment so overwhelming that even Cronus staggered under its weight. For a moment, just a moment, the Titan King felt pain. His eyes flickered. Just then, Styx moved. Runic symbols emerged from the ground, binding the Titan King, sealing his movements. Zeus. Poseidon. Hecate called out, not wanting to waste this opportunity. At her call, Zeus and Poseidon did not hesitate and prepared their strongest attack. The heavens screamed. The sea roared. Zeus' power that he had learned from Astraeus, the solar storm, crashed down on Cronus from above, while Poseidon's trident summoned a primordial flood of crushing force. A direct hit. The explosion shook the very foundation of Mount Othrys. The sky turned white with the force of the impact. The battlefield trembled. The 5 underworld gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hecate, all observed. And despair immediately came crashing down on their souls. Cronus still stood. His body was burned, broken, and bruised. But he was not defeated. His eyes narrowed. And then, he smiled. His form shimmered, and in an instant, his injuries vanished. His wounds had never happened. Because in this timeline he had altered, he was never injured. He had rewritten his own fate. I underestimated you lot. Cronus chuckled, twirling his scythe. The 5 river gods immediately braced themselves. Hecate, Zeus, and Poseidon quickly stood their ground. There is no time for despair. They must win. No matter what. Cronus smirked. Very well. Let us continue. Zeus gritted his teeth before he let out a roar, his authority causing the sky to darken as he sent a hail of lightning. Poseidon and the others followed suit, attacking Cronus with all their might. The air trembled under the weight of clashing divinities. Lightning flashed across the battlefield, illuminating the war-torn land with blinding brilliance. The ocean roared, its waves crashing violently against the fractured ground. Fire raged like an unchained beast, consuming everything in its path. Their combined powers were enough to shake the very foundation of the cosmos. Yet, Cronus smirked. He had seen this all, and just as he had seen, he will always win. Hecate's eyes flickered. She turned her gaze toward Lethe and Styx. A silent conversation took place. A mere exchange of glances. They understood. No words were needed. In the midst of the battle, with Cronus pressing forward with overwhelming force, they initiated their plan. Zeus' divine lightning fell like an endless storm, each bolt carrying enough power to annihilate lesser gods. Poseidon's trident sliced through the air, summoning tidal waves that crashed against Cronus like mountains collapsing. Cocytus unleashed a wave of sorrow, the suffering of countless souls concentrated into a single devastating force. Acheron's power of pain struck like an invisible fist, pressing down upon Cronus with the weight of millennia of suffering. Phlegethon's flames of judgment erupted, a torrent of divine fire intent on consuming the Titan King. And yet, Cronus deflected them all. His scythe cut through their attacks like they were mere illusions. Time bent around him. It was as if every strike against him had already failed before it was even made. But Hecate was watching. Waiting. Then, the moment came. Lethe moved first. With an eerie whisper, she called upon her authority, the power to erase memories. A shroud of forgetfulness enveloped Cronus. For the briefest of moments, the Titan King forgot about Styx. A fraction of a second. But that was all they needed. Styx acted. Her power, the authority of unbreakable oaths and divine curses, wrapped around Cronus like chains forged from the very fabric of the cosmos. She imposed a restriction upon him. For the first time, Cronus' authority over time was sealed. It was only for an instant. But that instant was all they needed. Now. Hecate's voice rang out. Zeus descended like a storm, his divine lightning forming a spear of pure destruction. Poseidon thrust his trident, summoning an oceanic vortex that could drown the heavens themselves. Cocytus unleashed a wail of despair, his power tearing through existence itself. Acheron's pain-infused strike crashed down with the force of every agony the universe had ever known. Phlegethon's flames erupted, hotter than the core of the earth, seeking to burn Cronus down to nothingness. The sky turned black. The earth shattered. Mount Othrys quaked as if the world itself was breaking. It was truly a strike that could have destroyed the cosmos. And yet Cronus still stood there. Untouched. Not a single scratch on him. Their most powerful combined attack had failed. You are all naive. Cronus' voice was calm, almost amused. The gods and river deities stared in shock. How? How? Hecate's mind raced. Had Styx's curse not worked? Had Lethe's power failed? Cronus smirked. Did you truly believe I would not foresee this? Their blood ran cold. I knew Lethe would make me forget. I knew Styx would attempt to bind me. I knew you would all attack me at that exact moment. Their eyes widened in horror. He had already rewritten fate itself. Before their plan had even begun, he had already changed his own future. The attacks they thought would land had already been erased from history. He never needed to defend. Because in the future he had foreseen, he had never been harmed to begin with. Hecate clenched her fists. This is absurd. Ha 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 ha. Cronus' laughter echoed across the battlefield, a chilling sound that carried the weight of absolute certainty. You have fought well, he said, his voice cold and measured. But this is where your struggle ends. He raised his scythe, and the air around them distorted. The very fabric of time trembled beneath his will. The gods felt their futures unraveling, twisting, breaking. And then, the slaughter began. Cronus moved faster than thought, faster than fate itself. A blur. A shadow of death. He appeared before Acheron first, his scythe already slicing through the god's chest before he could react. Acheron gasped as golden ichor spurted from his mouth. Suffering. Cronus whispered, "Let me teach you the true meaning of pain." With a vicious pull, he tore Acheron apart, limb by limb, ripping through divine flesh as if it were parchment. Poseidon was next. The god of lament let out a furious scream, ice encasing his hands as he lunged at Cronus, trying to freeze the titan's very essence. Cronus merely smiled. With a flick of his scythe, Poseidon's body shattered into countless frozen fragments, his divine soul breaking apart like fragile glass. Phlegethon burned hotter than ever, his entire being becoming a raging inferno. The flames of judgment raged across the battlefield, consuming everything in their path. But Cronus simply stepped forward, unharmed. And then, with a casual sweep of his hand, he extinguished Phlegethon's fire, erasing it from existence. The river of fire collapsed, his flames snuffed out like a dying ember. Lethe and Styx tried to retreat. But it was useless. Cronus appeared behind them. Before they could even react, he drove his arm through Lethe's back, his hand emerging from her chest. The goddess gasped, her authority dissolving into nothingness as Cronus crushed her heart in his grip. Styx glared at him as she launched forward, her divine power surging, attempting to bind him once more. But Cronus only chuckled. With one effortless motion, he swung his scythe and beheaded her. The river gods were gone. Their bodies lay broken, lifeless, their divine essence fading into the abyss. Zeus and Poseidon stood frozen, horror gripping them as they watched their allies fall one by one. Cronus turned to them, his face a mask of cruel amusement. "And now, my dear sons," he said, stepping toward them. "It's time to put an end to this rebellion." Zeus roared in defiance, hurling his thunderbolt with all his might. A spear of divine lightning tore through the battlefield, illuminating the sky with godly fury. Poseidon followed suit, summoning a colossal tsunami, his trident guiding the crushing waves toward Cronus. But it was meaningless. Cronus swung his scythe. Reality itself broke apart. Zeus' thunderbolt shattered in midair, its energy dissipating into nothingness. Poseidon's trident cracked, then snapped in two, its power severed from its master. Zeus and Poseidon barely had time to register what had happened before Cronus appeared between them. With one precise motion, he drove his scythe through Zeus' chest. Blood erupted from the king of the gods' mouth as he looked down in disbelief. And then, Cronus ripped him in half. Poseidon's eyes widened in horror. "No!" Before he could react, Cronus' scythe whipped through the air, and the sea god felt his body being torn apart, his divine form split into two halves. Their severed bodies collapsed, lifeless. The battlefield fell silent. Cronus turned to the last remaining god. Hecate. The witch goddess stood alone, surrounded by the corpses of her allies. Cronus thought she would look devastated and helpless. But she looked so calm, as if she hasn't witnessed her allies getting torn apart by him. And then, she let out a smile. Cronus narrowed his eyes. "You smile?" he asked, tilting his head. "Even now?" Hecate chuckled softly. "I was simply waiting," she whispered, "for this moment." Before Cronus could react, his entire body froze. A surge of unbreakable power enveloped him. His authority, his control over time, was suddenly gone. His eyes widened. What? And then, before he could even process what had happened, a burst of divine energy exploded from behind him. Zeus, Poseidon, alive, and their weapons, whole, illusions. Were the ones I killed mere illusions? With all their might, they drove their divine weapons straight through Cronus' chest. Ugh! Pain. For the first time in eons, Cronus felt intense pain. Zeus' thunderbolt burned his insides, crackling with divine power. Poseidon's trident pierced through his back, its godly waters rushing through his veins like poison. And then, Acheron rose from the ground, his body completely unharmed, his authority of suffering surging forward. He intensified Cronus' pain. Poseidon, perfectly safe, let out a wail of anguish, his frozen hands grabbing onto Cronus' soul, freezing it from within. Phlegethon's flames ignited once more, consuming Cronus' flesh. The Titan King gasped. This was not what he had foreseen. This was not supposed to happen. His power flickered. His vision blurred. How? How had he not seen this? His gaze locked onto Hecate. What did you do? She grinned. You have been fighting an illusion, Cronus, she whispered. Ever since the river gods appeared, you have already fallen into my trap. Cronus bared his teeth. I see every infinite timeline. There is no path, no possible outcome where I fall to a mere illusion. Hecate chuckled softly, shaking her head. You're right. Cronus' body tensed. Which is why, she continued, I put you under an illusion in every single one. A silence, vast and unrelenting, swallowed the battlefield. Cronus' breath caught in his throat. What? Hecate took a step closer, her presence exuding the undeniable weight of inevitability. The moment you laid eyes on me, she said, her voice like silk woven through fate itself, I cast a spell that wove its way across time itself. A magic that ensures whoever looks at me will fall under an illusion. Across all timelines. Across all futures. Across all possibilities. She gestured to the battlefield, to the gods standing before him, and to his own ruined body. You never saw the truth. Cronus' hands clenched into fists. Lies. His voice cracked through the air like a broken storm. Even if you deceived me, I could have seen through it. My power would have destroyed every future where I'm under an illusion. Hecate merely smiled. You're correct again. Cronus narrowed his eyes. So I ensured you forgot. A chill ran down Cronus' spine. Something was wrong. His mind, his memories, they wavered. What did you do? He whispered. Hecate's eyes gleamed with knowing. As the goddess of crossroads, I stand at the intersection of fate. I can interact with it and change it in subtle ways. I asked Lethe to make you forget just one timeline. Cronus felt something shift within him, a deep, yawning emptiness where a piece of his power should have been. What timeline? He demanded. Hecate exhaled, the air around her rippling as she spoke the words that sealed his fate, the timeline I was trying to reach. Cronus' mind raced. No, that was impossible. Yet, why couldn't he remember? The one thread in time he had failed to see. The one possibility that had slipped from his grasp. His own future. The future where he lost. The future where he was killed. His heart pounded, the weight of realization crashing down upon him like an unrelenting tide. Hecate raised her hand. And then, she whispered, I made sure you could never alter it. Dark energy crackled through the battlefield as the binding placed on him glowed. Styx. The river goddess, her eyes burning with unshakable resolve, extended her hand. The weight of divine law pressed down upon him, smothering his once unstoppable might. And then, Hecate spoke the final words that shattered him completely. This is no longer the future, Cronus. She leaned in, her voice barely a whisper, but absolute. This is the present. And your ability to alter the future no longer applies here. Cronus gasped. The truth hit him like a falling star. The gods. The battlefield. His own ruined body. This was not some illusion, not some trick of fate he could rewrite. This was reality. And he had already lost. Finish him. Hecate declared. Zeus and Poseidon roared as they pushed their divine weapons and ripped him in half. Golden ichor spewed out, staining the gods with the blood of the once mighty Titan King. The heavens trembled. The cosmos itself seemed to hold its breath. Hades and Uranus clashed, their battle shaking the very foundations of existence. You are strong, child. Uranus admitted, Tell me your name. Hades tilted his head, his brow raised, confused as to why he asked such a useless question. But he decided to humor him. This is his grandfather after all. Hades, god of the underworld. Uranus flinched for a brief moment. God of the underworld? Nyx allowed you to call yourself that. Hades shrugs, must be my charm. I'm simply irresistible. No matter, Uranus raised his hands, I will end you all the same. The sky warped under Uranus' presence, his authority over the primordial sky commanding the boundless forces of the universe itself. "You're not worthy," Hades attacked. As they clashed, the stars realigned, the wind shifted, and space itself bent to Uranus' will. Yet Hades was relentless. With every attack, he forced Uranus back, shattering the firmament with each strike. His power, his domain over the underworld, seeped into the battlefield, twisting the very laws of life and death. But then, Uranus' eyes burned with newfound resolve. He knew that if he continued like this, losing was inevitable. "Enough," he said, his voice resonating across all of creation. "Godling, no, God of the underworld. I acknowledge your power. Now, I shall show you the true power of the primordial sky." The sky darkened, an unfathomable presence weighing down upon existence itself. The stars flickered, dimming as though cowering before their progenitor. The winds howled, obeying his silent command. The fabric of reality twisted as Uranus' true power awakened. "I am the primordial sky, the boundless firmament," he intoned, his voice merging with the heavens. "All forces in the cosmos, heed my call." The universe obeyed. Galaxies spiraled around him, their orbits bending to his will. Gravity itself turned against Hades, trying to pull him apart. The air thickened, constricting like an invisible chain. Light wove itself into spears, piercing through the battlefield. The very concept of sky became a weapon. For the first time in the battle, Hades faltered. The crushing weight of Uranus' absolute authority bore down upon him. He clenched his teeth, his godly form trembling under the strain. So this is the primordial sky. Hades also possessed this authority. However, no matter how much he tried, he couldn't yet command it to his will, so he never really used it. Perhaps because the primordial sky itself still acknowledged Uranus as its master and deemed him to be unworthy. Uranus' lips curled into a smirk. "You have power, Hades, but I am the heavens themselves. Your domain, your very existence, is but a speck beneath me." Hades glared at him, his eyes burning with unyielding will. "Is that so? Then let me see how high the heavens are." He raised his hand, and the cosmos shuddered. A weapon materialized, a pitch-black, barbed spear radiating an ominous aura. The mere presence of it distorted reality around them, showing how it was no ordinary weapon. Desmos. A weapon forged by the Cyclops, a divine spear that could reverse cause and effect, and a curse that devours the life of whoever it was hit. Uranus' eyes narrowed. "That spear." Hades gripped Desmos tightly, its presence warping fate itself. "You like it? You are the second opponent who has witnessed this weapon, so be honored." With that, he attacked. Desmos tore through space, its tip aimed straight for Uranus. The moment it was thrown, time seemed to twist, reality itself struggling to keep up with its existence. Uranus commanded the cosmos to stop it. Stars aligned, the winds howled, and gravity reversed, but none of it mattered. Because Desmos did not follow the laws of the universe. It had already struck its target before it was thrown. Uranus barely managed to dodge, but even as he evaded, wounds appeared on his body. Blood spilled into the heavens. The cause had already been set, the effect was merely catching up. Uranus grimaced. "You reversed causality." Hades smirked. "Didn't see that one in your grand vision of the cosmos, did you?" Just then, Uranus noticed the dark curse eating away his life, coming from the wound caused by the spear. "A curse, huh?" Uranus simply flicked it away, breaking the curse. Hades raised an eyebrow, surprised that he can just casually shrug off a curse of that level. Uranus' gaze darkened. Such a powerful curse, if it was anyone else, then they would have been helpless, but I am not so easily defeated. The sky roared. He raised his hand, and the cosmos answered. The heavens split open, revealing an endless abyss of celestial power. The sheer energy of the universe's birth erupted from the tear in reality, a force that predated gods themselves. At this moment, the primordial sky unleashed its full might. Then, Uranus struck. A beam of light erupted from his hands with a force so great it was as if a new universe was created. Hades didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, Desmos in hand, calling forth the power of the depths of the world. He released a dark purple beam of power that clashed with Uranus' attack. The heavens and the underworld collided. Their contact sent shockwaves through existence. Entire constellations were erased and reborn in an instant. Space cracked like shattered glass. Uranus bent the forces of the universe itself, trying to ensnare Hades in absolute inevitability. But Hades was fighting back, as if the underworld itself were defying the will of heaven. Then, the two equally powerful opposing powers exploded, sending fissures in reality, causing space itself to get shredded like a piece of paper in a blender. Then, Hades launched himself at Uranus, his spear in hand, intending to fight him in close combat. Uranus wasn't one to be undone. Summoning a sword made of the forces in the cosmos, he clashed with Hades. Hades fought with precision, each strike a death sentence before it was even made. Uranus countered with overwhelming force, bending all of creation to shield himself. Their battle transcended realms. It was no longer a mere fight, it was a battle of existence itself. One would stand. One would fall. And the cosmos would never be the same. Honestly, I'm surprised. Hades admitted, I didn't take you for someone who can fight with weapons. I existed before time. What do you think? I'm curious about your skills. With that, Hades lunged forward, Desmos gleaming with its eerie, reality-defying power. Every thrust bent fate, every swing rewrote causality. But Uranus, the primordial sky incarnate, would not fall so easily. Why would I fight you with weapons when my domain is far superior? With a mere gesture, the cosmos obeyed his will. Gravity twisted violently, space folded over itself, and time froze and shattered in endless loops. Celestial storms raged, burning with primordial fury. You are indeed strong, stronger than any other primordials, Uranus admitted, his voice merging with the sky itself. But I was once the king of cosmos. With that, he lifted his hand. The heavens collapsed. The weight of the sky, the sheer force of all existence above, descended upon Hades like a mountain crashing down from eternity. The pressure was suffocating, as if the entirety of creation was trying to crush him into oblivion. Hades' knees bent. His bones groaned under the infinite pressure. But he grinned. You know why the underworld is below the sky? He asked, rhetorically, because the sky needed something to hold it up. Darkness erupted beneath him. The abyss of the underworld, the primordial force of death itself, rose like a tidal wave, crashing against the sky. Infinity split in half, one side an endless, crushing firmament, the other a yawning, consuming abyss. The two fundamental forces clashed. Hades forced himself upright, Desmos humming with ancient power. Strike and pierce, Desmos. He lunged, aiming straight for Uranus' heart. The spear had already struck its target before Uranus could react, or so it seemed. Uranus exhaled. The stars shifted. Hades suddenly found himself 10 steps behind where he had just been. His attack had never happened. His reality had been rewritten. You control death, Uranus said, his voice calm, ancient. I control everything before it. Hades narrowed his eyes. This was dangerous. Desmos could alter causality, but Uranus' authority rewrote the state of existence itself. He had undone Hades' attack before it was even conceived. You're proving to be more troublesome than I thought, Hades muttered, tightening his grip on his spear. Uranus smirked. Flattery will not save you. Then, he raised both arms. The cosmos collapsed and expanded in a single moment. Planets were born and died. Galaxies erased themselves from history. Reality wavered. And then, a single, massive celestial blade formed in Uranus' grasp, forged from the very fabric of the sky itself. A weapon of creation, meant to cut down destruction itself. Hades exhaled sharply. Now that might actually kill me. Uranus swung. A divine slash tore through space, carving a wound into the heavens. The force of the swing alone ripped apart the battlefield. The underworld's abyss howled in protest, resisting annihilation itself. Hades had no time to dodge. Instead, he met the attack head-on. Desmos thrust forward. The moment the celestial blade and Desmos met, time and reality ruptured. A paradox unfolded, cause and effect reversed, rewritten, erased, and restored simultaneously. Hades vanished. For a brief moment, Uranus felt victory. But then, a deep, mocking chuckle echoed behind him. Uranus turned, eyes widening. Hades stood where the celestial blade had first been formed. Desmos had rewritten reality once again. Instead of Uranus cutting him down, the cause had been reversed. Hades had transported himself back to the moment before the attack was even created. And in that instant, Desmos was already inside Uranus' chest. The sky god gasped, his divine ichor spilling into the void. The cosmos staggered. Uranus gritted his teeth, glaring at the spear embedded in his form. You. Hades exhaled, his expression victorious. That's checkmate, old man. But Uranus, he grinned. You think so? And the sky collapsed upon itself. The moment Uranus was struck, the heavens themselves retaliated. The very fabric of creation lashed out, obeying its master. Hades barely had a moment to react before he was engulfed in an infinite storm of destruction. Farewell, son of Cronus. Uranus observed as Hades was swallowed by the storm of destruction he had thrown at him. It was an attack with the power of a supernova. Not even Cronus himself would dare to take it head-on. Uranus knew Hades was strong, but he doubted that he could take that attack and not lose half of his body. However, from the ashes of the storm, from the crumbling wreckage of the cosmos itself, Hades emerged. Unharmed. A smirk curled his lips, his eyes gleaming with amusement. His jet-black robe swayed, untouched by the destruction that had just raged around him. That all you got? He asked, rolling his shoulders. I was expecting more from the primordial sky. Uranus observed him, as if stunned by the fact that he was completely unharmed. But then, a deep, rumbling laugh filled the void. Hades merely raised a brow, confused as to why the primordial of sky was laughing at this situation. He was expecting him to let out shouts of disbelief. Uranus stood above, floating in the firmament, his massive form stretching across the heavens themselves. His radiant body crackled with celestial energy, the very essence of the sky bending and twisting at his will. Ha! You truly are something, Hades, Uranus said, his voice weaving through space like an unbreakable law. You have my praise. I acknowledge that power. From this moment, you are worthy to stand before the heavens. Hades scoffed. His grip on Desmos tightened. I don't need your acknowledgement. Uranus grinned. Then, he raised his hand, and stars rained from the heavens. Each one was a world born and dying in an instant, collapsing under its own gravity before reforming into an even more destructive force. These were not mere celestial bodies. They were the heart of creation itself, burning with an eternal fire that had given birth to gods and mortals alike. They fell like divine spears of judgment. Hades didn't move. Instead, shadows stretched. A chasm of darkness yawned open behind him, vast and endless, a consuming void that swallowed the stars whole. Not a single explosion followed. Not a single light escaped. Uranus' attack simply ceased to exist. The primordial sky narrowed his eyes. Hades chuckled. My domain is the abyss itself, old man. Your stars mean nothing to me. Then, the air shifted. Well, let me test this new power I obtained. A depressing and gloomy aura radiated from Hades. It was an aura unlike his control over the underworld, unlike his manipulation of darkness. It was something far more terrifying. It was death. Or rather, it was certain death. Uranus' eyes widened. This power. He knew of this. He had felt this when his sons rebelled against him eons ago. Hades spun Desmos in his grip. The weapon pulsed, carrying the weight of an absolute law. One strike, Hades murmured, and you lose your immortality. The word sent a chill through the heavens. Uranus' expression darkened. 2 strikes, Hades continued, his voice calm and deadly, and you die. Yes. This is the power that belonged to his son, Iapetus, the titan of mortality. A power to turn immortals into mortals. A power to bring death to the undying. A power that should have died with the titan. A power that could kill even a primordial. Hades vanished. Uranus barely reacted in time. Space folded, and the sky itself twisted around him, shifting his form elsewhere. A blur of shadows streaked past where he had just been. Desmos sliced through empty air. Hades clicked his tongue. He was a breath too slow. Uranus gritted his teeth. He had faced many opponents in his long existence, but it was only at this moment that he had felt death so close. Not even when Iapetus, the original owner of that authority, was able to make him feel like this. If Hades struck him even once, he would no longer be immortal. There would be no chance of revival, nor would he be able to heal. If Hades struck him twice, he would die. Vanish into the void. Never to think. Never to feel. For Uranus, this was no longer a battle of dominance. This was a battle for survival. And he will make sure he will be the one to survive. Uranus clenched his fists. The sky roared in response. Galaxies fractured. Time bent. The very fabric of existence twisted as the sky god unleashed his full power. The primordial force of the heavens itself surged to his command, seeking to erase Hades before he could land a single hit. But Hades only smiled. Do better than that, Gramps. Hades responded, unleashing a beam of darkness that reduces all creation to the void. The two forces clashed for only mere moments before it exploded, shaking the foundation of the universe. Hades blinked and immediately noticed that Uranus seemed to have run away. He smirked. You can't run forever, old man. And, with a flash of purple light, he vanished. It was only a mere second, and he immediately caught up with Uranus. A blazing path of destruction tore through the cosmos. The two gods moved faster than light, streaking across the endless void, leaving annihilation in their wake. Stars exploded. Planets shattered. Galaxies collapsed. The universe trembled. Uranus, fleeing to the edge of existence, did not look back. He had never run from anything before. Never in all his eons had he known fear. And yet, the god behind him, the one who wielded mortality itself as a weapon, was something even he could not fully comprehend. It would be fine if it was just that, but Hades' powers defy reason. Even without relying on external means, it's no problem for him to face primordials and come out victorious. He's simply a monster. For an old man, you sure can run fast. Hades grinned, not stopping for even a beat as he followed after the primordial of sky. Shadows stretched across the fabric of reality, consuming everything in their path. Nebulas, dying suns, entire star systems, they all vanished into the abyss as he passed by them. Just then, Uranus stopped, having reached the edge of the universe. Hades also stopped, standing a light year away from Uranus. You forced me. The primordial sky roared. With a single motion, he ripped apart entire galaxy clusters, condensed their mass into violent spheres of energy, and hurled them back at Hades. 1,000 supernovas detonated at once. Their light bathed the cosmos in fire. How weak. Hades merely raised his hand, and darkness swallowed the cosmic inferno in its entirety. There was no explosion. No sound. Only emptiness. Uranus' eyes narrowed. Has his understanding of his authority reached such a terrifying degree? Hades smirked, seeing the helpless and confused look on Uranus's face. Darkness is the absence of existence, he said. Not hard to understand, is it? Uranus gritted his teeth. Not hard. Not even the primordial of darkness and shadow, Erebus, master that authority as much as you. Nothing can escape darkness, Hades continued, not even light. 3 years ago, Hades' authority over darkness was completely suppressed by Hyperion's authority over heavenly light. He couldn't even exert half of his powers at that time. So during those 3 years, he had trained and trained until his authority had become so overwhelming it could swallow all of existence. Don't blink, or you'll die. With that, he vanished. A heartbeat later, he reappeared before Uranus, Desmos in hand. The barbed spear gleamed with absolute finality. Uranus's eyes widened as he twisted his body, barely able to dodge. However, the tip of the spear still grazed his shoulder, and for the first time in eternity, he felt pain. That was one strike. Be thankful I can't activate Desmos while making use of my authority. Uranus jumped back, maintaining a light year of distance from Hades. He must avoid getting struck once again, or he'd surely perish. He must end Hades now or else. Primordial sky, heed my call. The entire universe responded to his will. The heavens themselves bent. The cosmic balance shifted. Uranus' form shrank, compressing into something far more dangerous. His once incomprehensible, celestial body condensed into a humanoid shape, standing at 180 centimeters. His skin was now obsidian black, like the endless void, adorned with an armor woven from the very fabric of the universe. Stars and galaxies revolved within it, as if the cosmos itself resided within his body. This was Uranus at his peak, a being who was once hailed as the king of cosmos. Hades merely grinned. "Now we're talking." He raised his hand. The underworld trembled. The gates of the dead flung open. A pulse of pure, infernal energy surged through him. His entire body ignited in black-purple flames. The power of the underworld. A power from the depths where all existence will end up at the end of their time. The power of the dead. The spirits. And Hades absorbed them all into his body, causing his appearance to undergo massive change. His form was now a walking inferno, a being of pure destruction, his very existence a blasphemy against the divine order. Two gods. One clad in the endless heavens. One wreathed in the flames of the abyss. Their eyes met. Their auras collided, tearing apart space and time. Then, they charged. The universe screamed. Hades and Uranus fought with pure strength, as if they decided to settle the fight with brute force. Reality itself twisted, reshaped, and distorted, unable to withstand the sheer force of their battle. The very order of the cosmos shifted with each blow exchanged. There were no divine weapons. There were no reality-bending attacks. No grand displays of godly authority. This was pure, raw combat. Two gods. Two fighters. Two unstoppable forces, clashing with nothing but their own bodies. Fists flew like meteors. Kicks struck like collapsing stars. Their golden ichor splattered across the cosmos, forming entire nebulae in their wake. With every impact, black holes formed and collapsed, entire galaxies shattered, and the boundaries of existence wavered. And yet, neither backed down. Hades snarled, his flaming body moving with inhuman speed. His fist struck Uranus' jaw with such force that space itself cracked, the shockwave rupturing entire solar systems. Uranus countered, his own star-forged knuckles driving into Hades' ribs, sending him careening through thousands of light-years in an instant. But Hades did not stop. He halted mid-flight, using the very force of Uranus' strike to propel himself forward. He blurred back into close range, shoulder-checking Uranus so hard the god of the sky coughed golden ichor. The heavens trembled. Uranus retaliated, launching a flurry of punches, so fast they distorted time itself. Hades blocked some. Endured the rest. Their forms became blurs, indistinguishable from the very fabric of existence itself. Then, a fist. A single, perfect strike to the stomach. Hades' knuckles dug deep into Uranus' gut. For the first time in their battle, Uranus staggered. And in that instant, everything changed. Hades' eyes gleamed. He had felt it. That moment of weakness. That infinitesimal fraction of a second where Uranus lost control. And that was all he needed. He moved like a demon unleashed. A second punch to the ribs, cracking Uranus' cosmic armor. A third to the sternum, forcing the sky god to wheeze. Hades stepped in, pressed forward, never letting up. A savage right hook to the face. Uranus' head snapped to the side. A thunderous knee to the abdomen. Uranus lurched forward. A brutal elbow to the back. Uranus collapsed onto one knee. Hades stood above him, his flaming body illuminating the darkness of space. He grinned. "What's wrong?" Hades taunted, voice filled with amusement. "The almighty primordial sky, losing to me in a fist fight?" Uranus growled, his fingers digging into the fabric of the universe itself. He tried to rise, but Hades' foot slammed onto his shoulder, pinning him down. Uranus' armor cracked further. The cosmos itself shuddered. "You." Uranus muttered, voice strained. He couldn't believe it. He was Uranus. The first sky. The primordial force of the heavens. The father of the cosmos. He had seen gods rise and fall. He had seen entire pantheons crumble before him. And now, here he was, on his knees before Hades. Hades chuckled, his foot pressing down harder. "You kept acting all cocky earlier. Look what happened. You're down on your knees." He leaned down, his burning purple eyes locking onto Uranus. "O mighty primordial of sky, how does it feel to fall?" Uranus gritted his teeth. "I never understood where your arrogance came from." Hades shook his head. "Me? from my strength. I have enough power that I let it get to my head. How about you? He slammed his foot, pressing Uranus down to his head. Strength? You're not as strong as me. Domain? You're not that unique. A former king? What's there to be proud about? I really don't see why you're so arrogant. Then, Hades punched down. His fist slammed into Uranus' face. The sky god's head whipped back, shattering his helmet. Hades grabbed him by the collar of his ruined armor and threw him through space. Uranus' body tumbled, crashing through the very fabric of reality, leaving a trail of destruction across the cosmos. Hades pursued. Before Uranus could even recover, Hades appeared above him, raising his fists high. Then, he brought them down. A double hammer fist. It slammed straight to his chest, creating an impact like an explosion of a universe. Uranus plummeted. He smashed into the core of a collapsing star, his form consumed by the supernova's explosion. Hades paused, his arms crossed on his chest as he observed the exploding star. Then, from within the inferno, Uranus rose once more. He was battered. Broken. His armor was in ruins. His celestial form flickered. But his eyes still burned with fury. Hades! He roared. The cosmos answered. Reality bends to his will. Hades laughed. His flames burned hotter. Good, he said, cracking his knuckles. I was starting to get bored. Then let me entertain you. Uranus lunged. His movements were wild, frenzied, and desperate. He attacked like a mad demon, his strikes carrying the raw fury of the heavens. Stars ignited and died in the wake of his fists. Space bent and shattered beneath his power. But Hades? Hades stood firm. Like an unmovable titan, he blocked, dodged, and countered every attack with terrifying ease. His eyes not leaving Uranus, looking almost bored. Uranus swung his fist, and Hades easily caught it. Uranus lashed out with a kick, and Hades parried with his forearm. Uranus tried to grab him, and Hades twisted, breaking free with a counterpunch that cracked the sky god's ribs. The cosmos screamed under their relentless exchange. Fist met fist. Power clashed against power. Ha ha ha. Hades laughed, enjoying this moment. He doesn't know why, but he was enjoying this battle. He wasn't expecting this, truly. Since when did he become such a battle junkie? He wondered. Well, now that he thought about it. He did enjoy fighting with Iapetus. He also enjoyed fighting Hyperion. He also enjoyed fighting Camp. All those times, he could have crushed them, but he chose to hold back. Was it because he was enjoying the fight and wanted it to extend? Yes, maybe that's why. Come. Show me more of what you can do, Uranus. Uranus gritted his teeth. He wanted to fight back, but every second that passed, he kept faltering. He kept getting weaker. But Hades. He was still powerful, still a force beyond comprehension. Uranus had fought for too long. Struggled too hard. And yet he was losing. And now, even after getting strength from the cosmos itself, he was still unable to gain an advantage. His movements grew sluggish. His attacks, once precise and overwhelming, were now just a step too slow. Hades noticed. And he grinned. You can feel it now, don't you? He taunted, sidestepping another reckless punch. That weakness crawling into your bones. That exhaustion creeping into your soul. Uranus snarled, but his breaths were ragged. His body trembling. He refused to accept it, refused to believe it. But the truth was undeniable. He was at his limit. Hades' grin widened. This is where it ends. He raised his hand. Darkness swelled in his palm, spreading outward, swallowing all light, all existence. Uranus stiffened. This was no ordinary darkness. Not even Erebus gave him this feeling. It's as if he's staring right into the eye of the abyss. It was dangerous. It was inevitable. Darkness is the absence of existence, Hades stated. I've said it to you before, didn't I? Darkness is a conceptual force that devoured existence itself. For darkness was not simply the absence of light. It was the absence of all things. To be consumed by it meant more than death. It meant erasure. It meant never having existed at all. This is what you can do once you have reached the pinnacle of this domain. Uranus' eyes widened. Tell me, Uranus, do you fear the dark? With a roar, Uranus summoned every ounce of his remaining strength, his body burning with the final remnants of his authority. The heavens themselves raged. Celestial storms erupted. Supernovas exploded. Reality itself wept under his will. But Hades? Hades simply lowered his hand. The darkness expanded. And everything stopped. The stars went out. The cosmos fell silent. The universe seems to have ceased to exist. Uranus' body froze. He could feel it. The darkness was already devouring him. He struggled, tried to resist, but it was like fighting against something that wasn't even there. Like trying to battle the void itself. His arms began to fade. His body was unraveling. And then, for the first time in his eternal existence, Uranus felt fear. At the same time, he felt an indescribable amount of anger at himself. He lost? To a mere godling? He can't accept this outcome. He glared at the god of the dead. And smirked. Yes, he's going to die anyway, so he might as well annoy this opponent of his. Taking a deep breath, he declared, his voice echoing throughout the cosmos. Hades, king of the underworld. This power, I acknowledge it. From this moment, I hereby declare, you are worthy to stand beyond heaven. Hades felt his cheek twitch. This old guy really wants to annoy him till the end. You are really an annoying, senile old man, Hades clicked his tongue. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he closed his hand. And Uranus was gone. Not dead. Not destroyed. Erased. As if he had never existed in the first place. The darkness receded. The universe breathed again. Hades stood alone in the void, his flaming body flickering as he exhaled. The battle was over. And he had won. The winds howled across Mount Othries. A gathering of gods, divine spirits, and warriors of legend stood at the summit, their gazes fixed on the distant battlefield. There was no movement, no sound, only breathless anticipation. Among them stood Zeus, Poseidon, Hecate, Hera, Demeter, Prometheus, Epimetheus, Themis, Camp, and the 5 underworld river gods. They had all fought, bled, and struggled to reach this moment. Now, they waited. Waited as the final clash unfolded. Waited as Hades and Uranus battled in the abyss beyond the heavens. From start to finish, they had watched. They had witnessed Hades' unyielding advance, seen Uranus' desperate retaliation, and felt the very fabric of existence tremble as the two deities reshaped the cosmos with their power. They held their breaths as Hades used the absolute power of his darkness to defeat the once almighty king of cosmos. Then, the sky shook. No, not just the sky. Everything. The primordial heavens themselves trembled and cracked as an unseen force rippled through the universe. The universe wept, as if mourning the loss of its once master. Yes, Uranus has fallen. A sudden, suffocating silence fell upon the world. The gathered gods stood frozen. Had it truly happened? Had the overlord of the sky, the first ruler of the cosmos, truly been defeated? For a moment, no one spoke. No one moved. The silence stretched, pressing down on them. And then, a roar erupted. A deafening, earth-shattering cheer. We have won. Hail Hades! Praise the king of the underworld! The words rang through Mount Othries like a thunderclap. Zeus threw his fists into the air, his lightning crackling around him. Poseidon let out a victorious shout, his trident raised high. Hecate closed her eyes, exhaling sharply before allowing a rare smile to grace her lips. The 5 underworld river gods bellowed their triumph, the echoes of their voices shaking the mountains. Hera, Demeter, Themis, Prometheus, Epimetheus, and the rest of the rebel gods stood together, reveling in the moment. The Titans were no longer the overlords of the cosmos. The war, which had torn the heavens and earth apart, was finally over. And they had won. On Hyperion's temple, the Titan of heavenly light opened his eyes as he felt the cosmos tremble. Even from the farthest reaches of the world, Hyperion felt it. A cry, not of a mun, not of a god, but of something far greater. A cry that reverberated through time itself, shaking the very order of existence. It was the cry of the primordial sky. Uranus was dead. So was Cronus. And with their fall, so too did the last vestiges of the Titan's dominion over the cosmos crumble. Hyperion sighed. He sat alone on his throne, feeling lonely and lamenting the end of such a glorious era. So, this is how it ends, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The final battle had come and gone, and he had not been there. He should have been. As one of the Pillar Titans, one of the 4 great pillars of the Titanomachy, it had been his duty to stand beside his brothers. To fight, to resist, to uphold the order they had once built. But he hadn't. Instead, he had remained here, watching from afar. He did not participate, because for 3 years since his defeat, he hasn't gotten over his trauma of Hades. He lifted his hand slightly, flexing his fingers. The motion was slow and strained. His body, once brimming with celestial power, still bore the lingering scars of that battle. Scars that ran deeper than flesh. That battle against Hades, it had changed him. He still remembered it vividly. The darkness. The endless abyss that had swallowed everything. The spear that had torn through his divine form. The chilling, suffocating presence of the Underworld king, who had no hesitation, no mercy, and no doubt. The battle had ended with Hyperion's defeat. He had barely escaped with his life. And from that moment on, something within him had fractured. The once unshakable Titan of heavenly light had been consumed by shadows. And so, when this final war erupted, when Cronus and the last Titans made their final stand, Hyperion had hesitated. He had wanted to fight. His pride screamed at him to fight. But he had been unable to move. He clenched his fists now, glaring at his own hands as if they betrayed him. How pathetic, he muttered. The battle had raged on without him, and now, it was over. The Titans were defeated. Hyperion turned his gaze toward the horizon, where he could see the flickering remnants of divine power still lingering in the air. The Olympians would rule the cosmos soon. What would they do to him? Would they hunt him down, like the rest of the Titans? Would they drag him in chains to kneel before the new rulers of the world? Perhaps. But Hyperion was tired. If this was the fate he had brought upon himself by refusing to fight, then so be it. He had no more will to resist. Maybe, he murmured to himself, this is the punishment I deserve. The Titan of heavenly light sighed once more, the last remnants of the past era fading with the winds. Atlas sat alone at the foot of Mount Othries, his body battered, his strength all but drained. His once proud golden armor was cracked and stained with divine ichor. His club, which had led countless battles, lay broken at his side. The battle had been ruthless. He had fought with everything he had, leading the last remnants of the Titan army in a desperate stand against the Olympians. But in the end, even his might was not enough. He had fallen. Defeated by Themis, Prometheus, and Epimetheus, his own kin. And now, as he sat there, struggling to breathe, he felt it. The shaking of the universe. The sky screamed. A terrible, deafening cry, one that shook the very foundation of the cosmos. Atlas froze. He knew what it meant. The Titans had lost. Cronus, the Titan of time, has fallen. And along with him was Uranus, the primordial sky, who had also died. The war was over. Atlas lifted his gaze, staring at the ruins of his once great army. His soldiers, the last warriors of the Titans, lay scattered around him, barely clinging to life. Some groaned in pain, some stared blankly at the ground, and some did not move at all. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. This was his failure. As their leader, he had promised them victory. He had stood at the front, commanding them to fight, urging them to push forward. And now? Now, they lie in ruin. Atlas exhaled slowly, lowering his head. What would the Olympians do to them? Would they execute them all? Would they chain them in the depths of the underworld, doomed to suffer for eternity? He hoped not. His soldiers had fought because he led them. They had followed him because they believed in him. They did not deserve to suffer for his failures. If anyone must be punished, Atlas murmured, voice hoarse, let it be me. That is his duty. The duty of a leader. For his subordinates, he will shoulder even the heavens. The winds of Mount Othries carried with them the echoes of victory. A battle that had shaken the very fabric of existence had finally ended. The primordial sky had fallen, and with it, so too had the last remnants of the Titan's dominion over the cosmos. And now, through the rippling darkness, a figure descended. Hades. He stepped forward, emerging from the abyss, his black robes billowing in the winds of a dying battlefield. His golden ichor still stained his hands, the last remnants of his battle against Uranus. His eyes flickered with an unreadable emotion as he took in the sight before him. They were all waiting for him. And then, a roar of celebration erupted. Hades. The gods and divine spirits cheered, their voices shaking the mountains as they welcomed the god of the dead. Zeus and Poseidon were the first to reach him. Brother. Zeus called out, his voice thunderous with joy. Without hesitation, he clapped a hand on Hades' back, laughing with unrestrained pride. You did it. Poseidon joined in, gripping Hades' shoulder and shaking him slightly. The sky itself fell before you. You mad bastard. Hades exhaled. It was nothing. The next moment, Hera was in front of him. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him into a warm embrace. Thank goodness, you're okay, she murmured, resting her cheek on his chest. Hades blinked, momentarily caught off guard, but he didn't pull away. Hera stepped back. She stared at his eyes before pecking him on the cheek. Hades stared at her, and he immediately caught the heated affection filling her eyes. Okay. I guess Zeus lost a wife. Demeter stepped up next, her amber eyes shining with mischief. She crossed her arms, tilting her head at him with a playful smirk. I have to admit, I didn't expect you to come back in one piece, she teased, but I suppose I shouldn't be surprised anymore. True, you shouldn't. He tilted his head towards her as she chuckled. She walked towards him, and following Hera, kissed him on the cheek before giving him a gentle smile. That's a you did well, I'm proud of you, kiss, she stated, seeing Hades raised a brow at her. And I'm glad you are well. She completely ignored her younger sister, who was glaring at her. It's just a kiss. Why are you so mad? What would you do if I actually tried to climb into his bed? Would you go insane? Though, those thoughts were never said. She doesn't want to piss off Hera. Just then, the 5 underworld river gods kneeled before Hades. Each of them, deities who controlled the very veins of the underworld, bowed in deep reverence. Lord Hades, Styx spoke first, her voice unwavering. You have accomplished what no god before you has. The heavens themselves fell before your power. Lethe, her expression unreadable, added, We are honored to serve you, my lord. Phlegethon, Cocytus, and Acheron echoed their sentiments, their respect unwavering as they swore their allegiance once more. Hades regarded them for a long moment before nodding. Rise. You have all fought well. They obeyed immediately, pride gleaming in their divine forms. Then, Hecate stepped forward. Her eyes met his, unreadable yet filled with something unspoken. You have done well, my king. Hades inclined his head, watching her carefully. Yeah? Well, you're a great partner, Hecate. A rare, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. I'm glad you're fine, Hades. There was a pause, a silent understanding. But before anything more could be said, Camp lunged at him. The dangerous, sexy, half-naked dragon girl latched onto his back, her clawed arms wrapping around his shoulders as she cackled with excitement. Master! Master! That was amazing. Camp's sharp fangs glinted as she grinned. You killed the primordial sky. I knew you were powerful, but that was beyond anything I could have imagined. Hades sighed, though there was amusement in his voice. Camp, get off me. Never, she declared, tightening her grip. She's not going to let go anytime soon, Prometheus chuckled, stepping forward. His eyes gleamed with mirth. You know, I had already foreseen this outcome. And yet, even now, I'm still amazed to see it happen with my own eyes. Themis, standing beside him, gave Hades a gentle smile. You have done the impossible, she said. The old order is no more. A hum of agreement rippled through the gathered gods. The Titans, the rulers of the cosmos for eons, were no longer. Hades exhaled, his shoulders finally relaxing. He looked around, taking in the faces of those who had fought, bled, and suffered alongside him. They had all fought for this moment. And now, they had won. The cheers grew louder. their voices rising like a storm. Hades' name echoed across Mount Othries, shaking the very foundations of the world. Hades! 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 The Underworld King simply stood there for a moment, watching them all. Then, for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to smile. At the edge of the universe, where existence itself trembled in the wake of Hades and Uranus battle, something stirred. A crack had formed in the fabric of reality, a hairline fracture barely visible against the void. But from within that darkness, something looked back. A single, unblinking eye. Its gaze was ancient, alien, and beyond comprehension. A presence not of this universe, something that did not belong to the laws of existence that govern the cosmos. It had been watching. Drawn by the unfathomable clash between the Lord of the Underworld and the primordial sky, this being had glimpsed into a realm that the outside was never meant to see. And now, it had found a way in. A deep, guttural sound reverberated through the void. Not a voice, but a presence, something beyond language or thought. Something wrong. Then, from the crack, countless twisting, writhing tentacles emerged. They moved with purpose, searching, prying, and trying to force the wound open. The very fabric of the universe strained against them, as if reality itself was rejecting this entity's intrusion. But it persisted. The eye remained unmoving, locked in a stare so absolute that even the stars seemed to shudder beneath its gaze. And for the first time, the universe felt small. Mount Othries, once the seat of the Titans' rule, lay in ruins. The once proud temple of Cronus was now reduced to rubble, the remnants of an era that had finally come to an end. Yet beneath its fallen columns and shattered statues, laughter, music, and celebration filled the air. The Olympians had won. For 3 days and 3 nights, they feasted, drank, and danced, reveling in their hard-earned victory. Divine wine flowed like rivers, filling golden goblets that never emptied. Hestia's sacred flames burned bright, casting a warm glow over the gods and their allies as they sang songs of conquest and glory. Even the normally reserved Hades allowed himself a rare smirk as he watched his comrades indulge in their triumph. Hera and Demeter danced with the nymphs, and Poseidon drank himself into a stupor with Epimetheus and Prometheus, while Zeus, ever the center of attention, boasted of his battles, his laughter booming like thunder. It was 3 days of feasting and laughter, celebrating the coming of a new era. However, when the 4th day came, the celebration ceased. It is now time to settle an important matter. The division of cosmos. The gods gathered in a solemn circle, their revelry replaced with purpose. At the center sat 3 thrones, each magnificent in its own right. Hades sat upon a dark obsidian throne, its polished surface reflecting no light, absorbing all in its presence. A throne of authority, finality, and judgment, one that befitted the Lord of the Underworld. Zeus rested upon a golden throne, gleaming like the sun itself, radiating power and ambition. It was a throne that demanded obedience, one meant for a king. Poseidon leaned against an emerald throne, its deep green hues mirroring the depths of the ocean. It was a throne of storm and tide, strength and fury, belonging to the god who ruled the waters of the world. The 3 strongest gods sat, their concealed power radiating an oppressive feeling. Hades was the first to speak, his voice calm yet absolute. "I will not participate in this," he said, his eyes unwavering. "The underworld is already my domain, and I am content with it. Whoever rules the sky or a sea is none of his concern. After all, at the end of the day, no matter how high the sky is or how vast the ocean is, they will always, inevitably, come to an end. And all that has ended will fall to the underworld." Zeus and Poseidon exchanged a glance, each knowing what that meant. Only 2 domains remained, the sky and the sea. And there could only be one ruler for each. The earth wasn't even an option, as it is the domain of Gaia. And no one wants to piss off a primordial by claiming dominion over her domain. A silent tension filled the air. These 2 great gods had fought together against the Titans, but now, they would have to settle who among them would take the greatest domain of all, the sky. Rhea, their mother, stood beside Gaia, the primordial earth, her expression unreadable. Hestia, the eldest sibling, watched in quiet concern. Hera, Demeter, Hecate, and the others observed in expectation, knowing that whoever ruled the sky would rule over all. Gaia, the oldest among them, finally stepped forward. Her voice was like the shifting of mountains, ancient and all-knowing. The division of the world shall not be decided by battle nor by ambition, she declared. It shall be left to fate. She raised a hand, and from the earth rose two identical stones, smooth and shimmering. Inside one of them was gold, the other, emerald. She held them out to the two gods. Whoever picks the golden stone shall rule the sky, she continued. And whoever picks the emerald stone shall rule the seas. Then, without warning, she threw them into the air. A flash of lightning. A blur of motion. Zeus and Poseidon vanished in an instant, their divine speed leaving the watching gods and divine spirits in awe. The stones soared through the sky, and the two gods raced toward them with the speed of light, each aiming for the one they desired most. Zeus' heart pounded like a drum of war. He had dreamed of the sky, of ruling above all, of standing atop Olympus as the king of the gods. The golden stone was his. He reached for a stone, his fingers inches away, but Poseidon was just as determined. The sea was powerful, unpredictable. It had no master, no true king. But he had ruled it in battle, commanded it as his own, and he knew that it was his destiny to claim it. However, he also wants to be the king of the heavens and rule over all cosmos. Their hands clashed mid-air, sparks of divine power crackling as they wrestled for their chosen fate. The entire sky trembled beneath their might, the heavens themselves bearing witness to the moment that would define the cosmos. The gods watched, their eyes wide with anticipation. Then, a flash of gold. A gleam of emerald. And it was over. The gods gathered around as the two brothers landed. Zeus opened his hand. In his palm lay a certain stone, and in an instant, it cracked and broke apart, revealing a golden stone, gleaming brightly like the sun. Poseidon stood beside him. The stone on his hand cracked and broke apart, revealing an emerald stone, gleaming like the sea on a horizon. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a roar of thunder echoed across the heavens. Zeus threw his hands into the air, his form radiating with power and triumph. "I am king of the gods," he bellowed, his voice shaking the very fabric of the world. "The sky belongs to me." Lightning flashed across the heavens, illuminating the new ruler of the cosmos. The gods cheered, their voices rising in unison. The age of the Titans was over. The age of the Olympians had begun. Poseidon, though disappointed, smirked. The sea was vast, endless. It had its own power, its own mysteries. He would rule it well. Hades remained silent, watching his brothers celebrate their victory. His realm was already secure, his power absolute. He had no interest in ruling over cosmos or the mortal world. The cosmos had been divided. The gods had taken their thrones. And the new era has begun. Later that night, a small temple sat upon a quiet hill, untouched by the chaos of war. It was an ancient structure, its pillars cracked with time, yet within its worn walls, warmth and peace filled the air. Inside, a long wooden table was set, illuminated by the flickering glow of torches and Hestia's sacred flame. Plates of ambrosia, goblets filled with divine nectar, and an array of fruits, bread, and honeyed meats were spread on the table. Rhea, Hades, Poseidon, Zeus, Hestia, Demeter, and Hera sat, gathered around the table. For the first time in years, the Olympians sat together, not as warriors, not as rebels, but as family. At the head of the table sat Rhea, their mother, her presence gentle yet firm. She had endured so much, watching her children rise against their father, waiting for the day when peace would finally come. Now, as she looked upon them, victorious and free, a soft smile graced her lips. As they ate, laughter and conversation filled the temple. For the first time since their war against the Titans, there was no talk of strategy or battle, only peace. Then, Rhea set down her cup and looked around at her children. "The war is over," she said gently. "What do you all plan on doing now?" A brief silence followed. Some of the gods paused, considering the question. Others already knew their answers. It was Demeter who spoke first. She twirled a strand of golden wheat between her fingers, her amber eyes shimmering with excitement. "I want to wander the earth," she said with a smile. "To travel across its lands and search for unique plants and flowers, to bring beauty to this world." Rhea nodded approvingly. "That sounds wonderful, Demeter." Hestia placed her cup down, her expression serene. "I'd like to have my own temple, somewhere peaceful," she said. "A place where I can live quietly and tend to my flame." I have no desire for power or rule. Rhea's eyes softened. That suits you well, my dear Hestia. Then, Hera spoke. She sat beside Hades, her hands resting on the table as she gazed at him. I will accompany Hades to the Underworld, she declared. A hush fell over the table. Even Hades, who had barely reacted to the other's words, turned to look at her. His eyes flickered, but he said nothing. Rhea only smiled knowingly. Then, Zeus cleared his throat. I will rebuild Mount Othries and rename it Mount Olympus, he said with pride. It will stand as a symbol of our victory and our rule. Then, he clenched his fist. His blue eyes darkened slightly. I will also hunt down the remnants of the Titans and deliver justice as necessary. Rhea sighed but did not argue. She knew Zeus' heart, his thirst for order and dominion. Poseidon leaned back in his chair, smirking. As for me, he said, I will return to the ocean, my true home. And I plan to marry a certain nymph that I've fallen for. Rhea smiled. Congratulations, Poseidon. I wish you and her a happy marriage. Hera nodded at that. I will bless your marriage, brother. Then, all eyes slowly turned to Hades. He had remained silent throughout the discussion, listening but not speaking. Now, under the weight of their stares, he finally set down his fork and sighed. I will rule the underworld, he said simply. His voice was calm and unwavering. And I will likely never interfere with the affairs of the upper world. Silence followed his words. Hades did not elaborate. He did not promise grand ambitions or future conquests. His duty was clear. His path is already chosen. And that was enough. Rhea studied him for a long moment before nodding approvingly. Then do so with wisdom and strength, my son. Hades gave her a small nod in return. With that, their meal continued, the harmony of family filling the temple once more. The night was quiet, the sky a vast expanse of darkness, dotted with silver stars. A gentle breeze drifted through the trees, rustling the leaves in a soothing whisper. The war was over. The cosmos had been reshaped. And Hades can now rule his domain in peace. He sat beneath an ancient tree, its gnarled roots spreading beneath him, its sturdy branches stretching toward the heavens. The cold air of the night did not bother him. Instead, it felt familiar, comforting in a way that few things did. As Hades gazed at the stars, lost in thought, soft footsteps approached. He did not need to look to know who it was. His mother, Rhea. She walked toward him, the moonlight casting a silver glow upon her figure. Draped in flowing white robes, she moved with the grace of a queen, yet there was something tender about the way she carried herself. She stopped beside him and smiled gently. You're awake. Hades glanced at her, then turned his gaze back to the sky. So are you. Rhea chuckled softly and lowered herself beside him, folding her hands in her lap. They sat together in comfortable silence, the only sound the occasional whisper of the wind. After a moment, Rhea spoke again. How do you feel? Hades hummed, tilting his head as if considering the question. Relieved, he admitted. Rhea nodded, as if she had expected that answer. The weight of war is heavy, but the weight of peace is not much lighter. Hades nodded at that. Perhaps. The two sat for a while, watching the sky, before Rhea turned to him again. Her voice was softer now, more thoughtful. Do you remember, she asked, the question I asked you years ago? Hades did not need to think. He remembered perfectly. What will you use your strength for? Back then, he had answered without hesitation. So I will never feel powerless again. He had just been thrust into this mythical time. He was afraid of dangers, of the unknowns, so he wanted strength to ensure he will never feel helpless. Rhea turned her gaze to him, studying him carefully. Has your answer changed? Hades did not respond immediately. Instead, he let the wind pass through, the cool air brushing against his skin. He listened to the rustling of the leaves, to the quiet heartbeat of the world around him. Then, slowly, he stood. Turning toward his mother, he shook his head. No, he said at last. My answer has not changed. Rhea watched him, her expression serene and calm. But, Hades continued, a small smile forming on his lips, I have found another reason to use my strength. Rhea's eyes softened. And what is that? Hades lifted his gaze to the sky once more. His eyes reflected the moon's pale light, steady and unyielding. To be a great king. Rhea stared at him for a long moment before finally smiling. It was a smile of pride, of understanding. She stood, placing a hand on his shoulder. Then be one, my son. And with that, she left him to the night, knowing that he already was. A week later. During this time, Hades and his siblings have been dealing with the aftermath of the war. Delivering punishments, offering rewards, among other things. Zeus even completely built a grand temple of worship in the former Mount Othries, now renamed Mount Olympus. He had decided to form a council of 12 mightiest gods to watch over all of creation, saying that having different voices would reduce one's authority and prevent them from turning into a tyrant. Aside from Hades, who refused to join, all his siblings had become part of the council, and Zeus was still searching for more suitable members. But that wasn't any of his concern, because he will now return to his domain. Hades stood in front of a dark purple portal that sent ripples to space. He observed for a while before stepping in. The 5 underworld river gods and various underworld gods and divine spirits all followed him. Hera walked beside him, serene and composed, though her presence was anything but silent. Camp, dragging her feet while glaring at Hera, threw her arms into the air, exasperated. "Why did you come?" she snapped, her voice echoing in the dark void. "Weren't you part of that Olympian council? Why are you accompanying us, you self-proclaimed queen?" Hera answered coolly, not missing a step. "I didn't know I needed your permission to walk beside my dear brother." She cast a sideways glance, her lips curved in faint sarcasm. "Or has the underworld suddenly gained a queen?" Camp hissed. "Gore. I hate you." "Nothing new," Hera said simply, a calm smile on her lips. "Try to come up with something that would actually trigger me." Camp gritted her teeth, muttering under her breath, but said no more. Hades simply looked back at them but said nothing, his long strides unwavering as he led them through the void, his eyes focused on the path ahead. The underworld breathed around them like a slumbering beast, its rivers and shadows stirring at the return of their rightful master. Beside Hades walked Hecate, her lantern aglow with ghostly fire, her hair gliding like ink in water. She cast a glance his way and spoke quietly. "Lord Hades, now that you have officially declared to Cosmos that you will rule the underworld, I believe now is the time to meet her." "I know," Hades replied. "Nyx, the primordial of night. The undisputed strongest being in all of Cosmos and the true ruler of the underworld. She is not one to be ignored, even now," Hecate said, her voice tinged with a reverence rarely heard. "She may not seek dominion, but her presence is the backbone of all that lives here. She was here before light, before time. The underworld belongs to her still, in essence. I will visit her soon." Hades nodded. "Don't worry, I know what must be done." Hecate nodded and said nothing more. She simply walked in silence. Their journey stretched longer than any road in the overworld. Above them, no stars shone, only drifting fragments of lost souls, their whispers brushing against the travelers like falling snow. After what seemed to be an eternity, they reached the center of the underworld, a vast obsidian plateau, surrounded by the 5 sacred rivers and lined with pillars made of bone and stone. And the grand fortress of Pluto, Hades' massive floating Gothic castle hang above, inspiring awe and reverence in whoever gazes upon it. It was here that Hades stopped, his cloak billowing behind him like a living shadow. His voice cut through the heavy air. "Within 5 days," he said, "gather every being in the underworld. Spirits, monsters, divine spirits, and ancient gods alike. Every corner must hear the call." The 5 river gods and every underworld gods who participated in the war stood at attention. Then, they all bowed in silent obedience. "We will not fail you," Styx said, her voice like iron on water. "See that you don't," Hades said, before turning away. One by one, the gods and spirits departed, their forms vanishing into the mist as they scattered to spread the decree. Soon, only Hera, Hecate, Camp, and Hades remained. The air was still, thick with the anticipation of change. Hades turned toward Hecate, his expression as unreadable as ever. "I won't waste time," he said. "I will go see her." Hecate gave a slow nod, her eyes shining like twin moons. Then may the shadows guide your path, Lord Hades. Unfortunately, I cannot accompany you. Hades simply nodded before turning towards Hera and Camp. I will be leaving. Hera, please manage the underworld as you had always done in the past 3 years. Camp, make sure no one causes any trouble. Leave it to me, brother. Hera nodded. Gotcha. No one will cause trouble, boss. I promise that. Camp gave a mock salute. Without another word, Hades stepped forward, the ground shifting beneath him. The darkness parted as though afraid to block his path. And deeper still he walked, past the roots of the world, past the endless cavern where even the dead dare not speak, toward the place where night herself dwelled. Toward Nyx, the primordial of night. The meeting would decide if the underworld would truly be his, or remain the domain of the first darkness. The underworld was a land of silence, of still rivers, hollow winds, and eternal twilight. But even within its vast emptiness, there existed a boundary far darker and more ancient. Beyond the banks of the Styx and past the frozen domain of Cocytus lay a realm untouched by time, where not even the primordials dared tread lightly. This was the threshold, the mysterious corridor that lay between the underworld and the chasm of Tartarus. It was not a place, it was a presence. A realm of nothingness, an eternal void of undulating shadows that shifted and twisted with unseen intent. And here, Hades walked alone. The moment he stepped foot past the veil, the void surged like a hungry beast, trying to swallow him whole. Darkness closed in from all sides, so absolute that it threatened to strip away thought, identity, and even reality. But Hades was no ordinary god. His aura erupted in a wave of dark brilliance, purple and black flames coiling around him like a cloak of sovereignty. His divine presence pushed back the void, carving a narrow path ahead. Shadows recoiled, whispering ancient things in forgotten tongues. But they dared not touch him. He walked. And walked. Time ceased to exist here. Minutes stretched into eternities, and eternities condensed into fleeting heartbeats. Only the steady sound of his footsteps accompanied him as he pressed deeper into the primordial dark. Eventually, after what could have been hours or centuries, he saw it. A temple. It stood like a mountain carved from obsidian, its spires piercing the darkness like fangs. It bore no torches, no banners, and no carvings to signal its purpose. Yet Hades knew. This place did not need names or symbols. It was felt in the bones, in the soul, and in the silence between heartbeats. Without hesitation, Hades ascended the stairs and passed through its towering gates. Inside, the temple was colder and older. The air was heavy, thick with divine presence. Pillars taller than mountains framed the endless corridor, and the stone beneath his boots echoed with each step, as though the temple itself was listening. He went deeper until he reached a vast hall so immense that even Hades had to pause. The chamber stretched endlessly, yet in the center of it all stood a lone obsidian throne. And on that throne, she sat. She was the embodiment of the night itself. Long black hair that spilled like liquid shadow down her back. Skin as pale as moonlight on marble. A black dress shimmered like the surface of a still lake at midnight. Her face was without blemish, without flaw, and yet, without warmth. Her beauty was not soft but cold, unyielding, like the void between stars. But it was her eyes that truly stilled him. Black. Deeper than any abyss. Looking at it, Hades felt an immense oppression, like he was back in chaos, staring at those indescribable horrors. Hades bowed his head lightly, offering his respect. His voice, steady despite the weight pressing on his shoulders, echoed through the grand hall. Nyx. Primordial of night. I greet you with all the respect owed to the mother of the underworld. The woman on the throne did not speak. She merely watched him, and the silence that followed was thunderous. The very air bent beneath the gravity of her presence. Even Uranus, the great sky, the tyrant who once ruled the cosmos, paled in comparison. His aura was as starlight before a black hole, meaningless. Then, finally, she blinked. And the universe sighed. You walk with confidence, Hades, she said, her voice like silk cut with steel, as if spoken from behind an endless veil. Many gods would tremble to stand where you now stand. Yet you do not fall to your knees. Hades met her gaze, not defiantly, but firmly. I have never felt that I am inferior to anyone for me to kneel. But I came here not for that. There is simply something I wish to understand. She tilted her head, a subtle movement that rippled through the void like a cosmic tide. Something you wish to understand? You are not my enemy, Hades nodded as he replied. Nor are you my ally. I want to know your stance about my rule of this realm, which you had previously ruled. Do you want to oppose me? Or do you want to serve me? Nyx's lips curved. Barely. Not a smile, but something like it. You want to gain control over all creation in the underworld, including me. I do. Hades stared at her straight in the eyes. I believe I can rule the underworld far better than you do. And with you to serve me, the underworld would prosper more than even the heaven and earth. She leaned back on her throne. The void around them grew deeper. Then step forward, you who seek to dominate me. Let us see if the darkness you rule is worthy to rule over mine. With that, an absolute power filled the temple, and an endless tide of abyss swarmed towards Hades, intending to swallow him whole. Hades remained calm, as if the darkness of the primordial night was a mere shade before him. And the moment his foot touched the obsidian floor beyond the invisible veil of Nyx's domain, the surrounding darkness parted. It did not resist. It did not recoil. It gave way, as though the very void acknowledged him. Like shadows bending to their rightful sovereign, they peeled back in silent reverence, exposing a path so clear it seemed predestined. Nyx's eyes narrowed in surprise. For countless eons, this realm of primordial night had bent for no one. Not Uranus, not even Tartarus itself. But this god, this Hades, he walked with a darkness not born of despair, but of dominion. There was no fear in him. No hesitation. His soul was a fortress, and his power, a sea without bottom. Now, he stood before her throne, tall and steady, a pillar of divine will cloaked in dark purple flame. His aura, heavy, ancient, relentless, poured into the room. The very air trembled. Even the walls of the temple seemed to lean away. Nyx, the primordial of night, stared down at him. And for the first time in ages, a glint passed through her cold, infinite eyes. Desire. But not a desire of flesh or hunger. It was a desire for something intimate. Like a mirror finding its other half. Slowly, she rose from her throne. Her presence, once aloof and silent, now bloomed like a dark flower, thick and enveloping. Every step she took toward Hades left ripples in the air, as though reality itself bent beneath her tread. And as she faced him, she reached up and, with deliberate grace, cupped his chin between her pale fingers. Her touch was cold. Ancient. Yet intimate. A touch that made time slow to a crawl. You stand so tall, Lord of the Dead, she whispered, her voice a velvet wind in the dark. Even in my dominion, your soul does not kneel. She tilted his face ever so slightly toward her, inspecting him, feeling the pulse of his divine essence beneath her fingers. Her lips curled, dark amusement dancing across them. I should crush you for your arrogance, she murmured. But instead, I find myself intrigued. Her fingers lingered on his jaw as her eyes searched his face, not just his appearance, but his soul, his core. With this presence, if you remain this way, then I will let you dominate me. As much as you wish. The weight of her words hung in the air like a thundercloud. Nyx, the being from which the very concept of darkness was born, offering herself. It wasn't submission from weakness. It was recognition. An offering from one absolute to another. Their auras began to move, drawn to each other like lovers pulled by the tides of fate. Black and purple merged, curled together, not as oil and water, but as two halves of the same force, lost and now rediscovered. It was overwhelming. It was staggering. It was beautiful. Nyx's voice dropped to a whisper, one that could quiet stars. Do you feel it? She asked, almost breathless. The way our divinities melt and blend? Like we were forged by the same flame, born from the same void, destined to find each other across the eons. Hades looked into her eyes. He did feel it. It surged through his chest like a roaring tide, his divinity, once solitary and cold, now resonating. As though something long missing had suddenly been returned. But he did not answer. He simply stared back, eyes like still obsidian. Silent. Powerful. Nyx's lips parted slightly at his silence. She searched him for emotion, for vulnerability, but found only the steady flame of resolve. It sent another tremor through her, an unfamiliar thrill. The god who faced her did not chase. He did not need to. The night herself was already circling him. Her eyes flashed with a mix of hunger and amusement. So quiet. You have already felt it. Why not speak? She stepped even closer, her voice growing darker and more intimate. But that's fine. At this moment allow me to declare it, Hades. Here and now, I will grant you a chance. A single opportunity to do what no god or titan has ever dared. She leaned in, her breath brushing his ear like moonlight on water. To dominate me. The eternal dusk of the underworld shimmered with quiet stillness. No screams. No cries. Only silence, heavy and watchful, as though even the land itself held its breath. From the edge of the void, Hades returned. He walked alone, emerging from the unseen paths that wound between Nyx's domain and the heart of his kingdom. His steps were slow and unhurried, yet each one rippled across the very fabric of the underworld like a command. Within a few steps, he arrived at the heart of the underworld, where his massive Gothic castle suspended above ground can be seen. His home. His throne. The place where he will rule the realm of the dead. The journey from Nyx's realm had been swift and uneventful, a stark contrast to the weight of what he carried back with him. Not just the authority of the underworld, but something more personal, more intimate. A clarity of self. A strange lightness, as if a piece of his missing soul has been completed. The great obsidian gates of the fortress swung open without a sound as he approached. With a single step, he arrived straight to his throne room. The moment his boots touched the onyx floor, an ethereal purple mist swirled in the throne hall, rising like a curtain being drawn for a divine performance. A beat later, the mist parted. And from it, Hecate emerged. Her form was graceful as ever, robed in deep twilight. She bowed her head slightly, arms folded with casual elegance. "Welcome back, my king," she said, her voice echoing softly through the vast chamber. "I trust your meeting with Lady Nyx was enlightening?" Hades said nothing at first. He walked past her, his footsteps echoing through the silent hall until he reached his throne, a tall, ancient seat carved from the finest ores in the cosmos, wrapped in faint purple flame. He sat slowly, his presence filling the space like gravity itself. "It was quite the experience," he finally said, his voice quiet but layered with weight. Hecate raised a brow. "In what way?" He gave her a small, mysterious smile. "Some things are best left in the dark. Even for you." Hecate chuckled softly, unfazed by his refusal to elaborate. "Very well." Hades adjusted his cloak as he leaned back into the throne. "What of the underworld? I assume preparations are proceeding as I ordered." Hecate stepped closer, her movements fluid and composed. "Yes. Nearly every creature and spirit, divine and lesser, has begun gathering beneath the fortress as commanded. The 5 river gods have formed the perimeter. Hera has taken it upon herself to organize the crowds." Hades gave a soft grunt of approval. "And Camp," Hecate continued, "is accompanying her, making sure no one stirs unrest. Between the two of them, even the most unruly beast dares not misbehave. Though I think she's just worried about Hera." That drew a deeper reaction from Hades. He smirked and folded one leg over the other, resting his cheek on a closed fist. "Strange, isn't it?" he mused aloud. "Despite how often they argue, they're like sisters. Fierce ones." Hecate gave him a sidelong glance. "Shared violence breeds kinship, especially among immortals." "I suppose so," Hades murmured. He remembered his brief battle with Iapetus. However short their fight was, Hades felt a lot of respect for the late Titan. For a moment, there was silence. Hades looked out toward the open balcony, where dark clouds swirled lazily above the amphitheater far below. Thousands upon thousands of shadows flickered beneath the fortress. Spirits, monsters, ancient gods, beings of fear and forgotten legends, all awaiting their new ruler's proclamation. It would be the first time since the fall of Uranus that the entirety of the underworld had gathered. And now, they would bear witness to the rise of a new king. Hades let out a long breath. "Everything is moving faster than I thought," he said, more to himself than to her. "One war ends, and now I must wear the crown fully." "You always wore it," Hecate said, her voice firm. "Now you merely stop pretending it's temporary." Hades tilted his head. "You're unusually poetic today." I'm always poetic. You're simply never in the mood to listen. He chuckled, low and brief, but genuine. Then his eyes returned to the horizon. There, beyond the sea of shadows and fire, beyond the obsidian mountains and rivers of flame, lay the vast, unknowable territories of the Underworld. Many of its corners remained wild, ancient, and untamed. Rulers of old still slumbered in the depths: Thanatos, Erebus, Tartarus. Spirits too dangerous or prideful to bow waited in silence. And yet, now, all eyes would turn to him. He was no longer the son of the late king. He was now the king of his own domain. The king of silence, of finality, of peace and death. And soon, all who lived in this realm, gods, monsters, and mortals alike, would swear their allegiance to him. He turned his gaze back to Hecate. 5 days. 2 now, she corrected. You've been gone for 3 days. The clock is ticking. Hades raised an eyebrow at her choice of words but didn't comment. Hades rose from his throne, his cloak billowing behind him like smoke. His presence surged: gravity, shadow, divinity. A sovereign force. Then let the realm prepare, he said. When the 5th day comes, they shall kneel, not because they fear me, but because they believe in the world I will build. Hecate bowed her head, eyes gleaming with pride and curiosity. And we shall be ready, my king. As she vanished into the mist once more, Hades remained standing, eyes fixed on the flickering shadows below. He could already hear the murmurs of the gathering masses. And soon, they would hear his voice. Overworld. The sun lingered above Mount Olympus longer than usual, as if even the heavens were too ashamed to cast night upon the sacred mountain. For 3 days and nights, the feasting continued, wild, unending, and decadent. Zeus had declared it a celebration for the ages, a commemoration of their triumph over the Titans, an offering to the new order of gods. But what had begun as a feast of unity had devolved into something far darker. The golden halls of Olympus, a place that was supposed to be of reverence and celestial grace, now pulsed with music, laughter, and the sounds of indulgence. The once pristine marble floors were littered with overturned goblets, spilled ambrosia, and silken robes torn in haste. Fires flickered in strange colors, and illusionary lights spun wildly through the air, cast by divine tricksters and spirits called forth to entertain. In merely 3 days, the grand temple became unrecognizable. Gods from every corner of the cosmos had answered Zeus' call. Young deities newly risen from the cosmic dust. Spirits of stars and comets. Ancient powers that had remained dormant throughout the war. They came for camaraderie, for honor, and for power. But power, as ever, twisted the hearts of those who sought to wield it. The goddesses of Olympus, respected warriors and strategists during the Titanomachy, now found themselves the subject of jeers and lecherous hands. Many were passed around like trophies, offered drinks laced with divine intoxication, their protests ignored or mocked. The bonds of war had eroded under the weight of unchecked authority. At the center of it all was Zeus. Crowned in glory, wrapped in robes that shimmered with the gold of lightning, he sat upon his new throne with a goblet in hand and a different goddess on his lap each hour. His laugh echoed like thunder, commanding and wild. He had been the hero of the war, the voice that rallied the Olympians. But now? Now he had become something else. Even his own sisters were not spared. Demeter, so full of warmth and gentleness, decided to stay in Olympus for a while to enjoy the feast. But when Zeus had reached for her with clouded eyes and an eager hand, she had drawn her divine sickles without hesitation. With wrath in her eyes and heartbreak in her voice, she cursed his name. "You are not the brother I fought beside," she had spat. "You are a stranger clothed in glory, drunk on power." She escaped that very night, descending the mountain in silence. She swore never to return and instead wandered the mortal world, vowing to find beauty and peace away from Olympus' corrupted halls. Rhea, mother of the Olympians, remained unaware. She had sequestered herself in a quiet temple far from Olympus, sharing the solitude with Hestia, the eldest and most peaceful of the gods. Together, they had withdrawn from politics and revelry alike, content to watch the world from afar, believing that peace had finally returned. But peace had only shifted. Unseen, the shadows of indulgence, pride, and arrogance crept deeper into Olympus. Whispers of dissent began to stir among some of the elder gods, and younger spirits spoke in hushed tones of how their dreams of a better cosmos had already begun to rot. On the 4th day, one of the underworld gods who had fought alongside Hades, returned to the overworld and wanted to enjoy the rumored grand feast. He did not step foot inside the hall, but first he simply stood outside, cloaked in shadow, and observed. What he saw made him turn away in disgust. "It is not Lord Hades who rules the land of the dead," he said later to another spirit, "but Zeus who commands a kingdom without soul." As the music blared louder and divine fires danced higher, the great halls of Olympus groaned beneath the weight of excess. The very mountain, ancient and wise, seemed to protest. Cracks began to form in the white stone, as if Olympus itself could sense what its new ruler was becoming. Yet none dared challenge Zeus openly. Not yet. But they remembered. They remembered Demeter's fleeing figure. The horror in her voice. Zeus' debauchery. His sins. And they remembered the glory that had once burned in Zeus' eyes, now dulled, clouded by pleasure and unchecked pride. One day, the gods would speak of this time not as the golden age of Olympus, but as the beginning of its long, slow fall. Under the vast sky of the underworld, where rivers of fire twisted through black stone and lost souls whispered in eternal lament, an ocean of divine spirits, ancient gods, and monstrous entities stood gathered beneath the towering fortress that floated in silence above them all. The floating citadel, Hades' fortress, cast a long, intimidating shadow over the realm, symbolic of the Mun who would now rule it. This was not a day like any other. It was the day a king would rise. Even those whose names had been lost to time, ancient beings who had slumbered through the reign of Titans, had stirred. From the edges of Tartarus to the farthest reaches of Lethe's domain, all eyes turned toward the dark heavens, watching. The underworld was tense, the whole realm holding its breath. They all waited. For they knew that a god will now officially ascend to the throne of the underworld. At this moment, the realm shook. And he appeared. Descending from the fortress like a comet born of void, Hades emerged. He wore deep black robes woven from his own divinity, threads of shadows and death. His crown shimmered with dying embers and midnight gemstones, a quiet symbol of power that demanded reverence. Beside him, two women walked, Hera, draped in dignified crimson and gold, her expression sharp and proud, and Hecate, the goddess of magic, robed in shadows, her presence silent yet commanding. The underworld river gods all stood behind them, acting as guards and protectors of the king. Then, the moment Hades' feet touched the grand obsidian platform, the entire assembly of gods and spirits fell into silence. Not a single whisper remained. Not a single breath dared disturb the stillness. All eyes focused on the Mun who will now be their king. Hades stepped forward. He stared at the gathered beings of the underworld, who all responded to his call. He stared at the far reaches of the underworld, where beings of old dared to defy his will. Then, he spoke. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone commanded attention, but his voice echoed throughout every corner of the realm of the dead like a clap of thunder. In the age of Titans, this realm was forgotten. You were prisoners, cast aside by those arrogant gods above, treated as if you were all inferior to them. The underworld was treated as a prison, feared and despised by every being who lived above ground. And anyone who dwelt in it was treated with contempt. But his eyes swept across the crowd, red as burning coals, calm as the abyss. But you endured. The murmurs of agreement rippled like a distant wave. You endured the humiliation. You endured the contempt and hate of those gods above. You stood silent when your names were unspoken, when the heavens forgot who you were. But now you are forgotten no more. The silence cracked. A few voices rose. Hades pressed forward, his voice like fire through winter stone. He wanted to let everyone know the underworld isn't a place they can treat as insignificant, and its denizens aren't someone they can dismiss and forget. The Titans believed they were eternal, that their power would stretch across all of time. But they fell. And they fell because of you, because you did not bow, because you did not break. Hera stepped aside, letting the god of the underworld shine alone. Hecate said nothing, but her magic pulsed behind her eyes, echoing his words into the hearts of every god and spirit gathered. The underworld gods of old, who refused to bow before him and chose to remain in their domain, now looked at him with respect. They acknowledged it, this coronation. From now on, Hades would be the true king of the underworld. No longer shall you cower beneath the sky's tyranny. No longer shall all of you be seen as monsters, as mistakes, as afterthoughts in the song of existence. I hereby declare, from this day forward, you are the guardian of balance. bringer of order, and gods and mortals shall respect your names." He paused, and in that silence, every soul leaned forward. "I do not ask for worship. I do not seek glory. I have walked the path of fire and ruin. I have faced the void and stood unshaken. I did not rise to this throne to wear a crown. I rose because this realm needed a king." His eyes glowed, the shadows at his feet curling upward like tendrils of devotion. The gods and spirits all stared at him in fascination, eyes full of reverence and admiration. "I will forge the underworld anew. I will bring order to the chaos, judgment to the lawless, mercy to the broken. I will be the shield against the gods who are wronged and the sword against those who threaten our home." He raised his hand toward the heavens, as if declaring that not even the sky can disrespect this domain. And these gods knew that this was not a mere declaration. Hades had proven his words by slaying the primordial sky. "This is our realm, our kingdom. From this day forward, we are not outcasts. We are not the leftovers of the world. We are the heart of the cosmos, the truth behind every end, the cradle of finality. The underworld will not be a realm of despair, but of order and strength, where even death has purpose." His voice turned into a roar. "I, Hades, son of Rhea, brother of the sky and the sea, claim the mantle of king of the underworld. And to all who call this realm home, I swear this." He placed his hand over his chest. "You will never be forgotten again." For a moment, silence reigned. And then, thunderous cheers erupted like the eruption of 1,000 volcanoes. The ground trembled from the force of their shouts. Ghosts screamed in joy. Spirits wept. Demons howled in approval. The rivers roared. The darkness itself sang. "Hades! Hades! Hades! Praise the king of the underworld! Hail, Hades! Long may he reign!" His name echoed through the realms, sung by the lost and the mighty alike. In that moment, the underworld was no longer a prison. It was a kingdom, and its king had finally taken his throne. Overworld. Temple of Prometheus. The Temple of Prometheus stood silent atop a lonely mountain, its stone walls adorned with ancient carvings, lit only by the soft glow of amber flame. Here, far from the endless feasts of Olympus and the cold authority of the underworld, Prometheus sat alone, content, amused, and quietly watching. A crystal sphere floated just above his open palm, swirling with mist and light. Within it, the image of Hades flickered, standing above the masses of the underworld, his obsidian cloak billowing, his voice ringing across the vast darkness with the gravity of a rising king. The gathered gods and spirits below him had fallen silent, and now their roars of approval echoed even through the crystal. Prometheus grinned. He swung his feet like an eager child on a high stool, drumming his heels on the marble ledge below. "Well now," he mused, the firelight catching in his golden eyes. "Look at you, the anomaly of this world. King of the underworld at last." In the orb, Hades raised his hand and finished his speech, his voice solemn, commanding, but brimming with passion. His final words were not threats nor declarations of conquest, but a promise that the underworld would become a realm not of despair, but of order and strength. A place where even death had purpose. Prometheus' smile widened. "Ha ha ha. You really are interesting." He leaned closer. "I want to see the underworld that you are going to create." He watched until his brows furrowed as the image in the crystal shifted. Hades' eyes, those cold, still eyes, turned. Slowly, deliberately. And for a breathless moment, they locked with Prometheus. Prometheus. The Titan froze. His breath caught in his throat. Though it seemed impossible, he was sure that Hades had pierced the veil of distance, the layers of magic, and seen him through the scrying spell. "Oh hell no." With a laugh that was half startle and half glee, Prometheus snapped his fingers. The orb shattered into smoke and sparks, vanishing into the air. He tossed the remaining fragments aside and leapt up from his throne. "Still as perceptive as ever, Hades," he chuckled, stretching his arms high above his head. "Not bad for a new king." He stood from his throne as he walked across the chamber, bare feet soft against the stone, and gazed out from the balcony overlooking the world below. A gentle wind brushed his wild hair as the stars wheeled quietly in the heavens. "The Titans are done. Olympus is a circus," he murmured to himself. "But you, You'll bring something new. Something the world hasn't seen before. He turned his gaze downward, to the vast and fertile earth below. A spark of fire danced on his fingertips. It's time, Prometheus whispered, eyes gleaming. The gods have found their thrones. Now, let us shape those who will one day stand beneath them, and one day, beyond them. He extended his hand, and from the divine flame in his palm, he molded something small, something fragile, yet brimming with untapped potential. Let the age of men begin. The ashen plain beneath the hanging fortress of Pluto stretched endlessly, an ocean of darkness brushed with flickers of phantom light from drifting soul wisps. Here, at the heart of the underworld, Hades stood, arms crossed, his piercing gaze scanning the emptiness as if already envisioning what would soon rise from it. Beside him stood Hera, her hands clasped behind her back, regal and calm, and Hecate, cloaked in starlight and mist, her expression thoughtful. A city, Hera proposed, her voice carrying a quiet strength. Right here. A place for souls to dwell, to gather. Something more than barren stone and silence. A sanctuary for the dead, a home for the divines. Hecate nodded. Even the dead long for structure, for beauty. A city will bring harmony to this realm. It can give form to your rule, Lord Hades. But Hades remained silent for a moment, eyes narrowing. No, he said, voice calm but resolute. Not just any city. This land will not be for every soul. Only the greatest among the dead, those who achieved feats beyond the reach of others, will reside here. And the gods of the underworld. This will be our seat of power. The heart of judgment, of counsel, of celebration and mourning. He raised his hand. The earth trembled. A circle of black stone rose from the ground, unfurling like blooming obsidian petals. A large table formed in the center, surrounded by chairs shaped from flowing darkness and veins of amethyst. Hades sat, pulling out a bundle of ancient papyrus, and laid it across the table. Let us begin, he said. Design this place not merely as a city, but as a monument to death and eternity. Hera took a seat opposite him, the mist of her robe billowing like pale fire. If that is the case, then we must make it beautiful, she said. An altar at its center where we will relocate Hestia's eternal flame. She may not live among us, but her hearth should always burn here. It will bring warmth, even to the dead. During the past 3 years that Hestia has lived in the underworld, the souls of the dead have been living here in peace, and all of it is due to Hestia's flame. Even the most restless and troublesome gods would calm down and enjoy the warmth brought by the hearth. Hecate added, and if this place is to host gods and spirits, it must entertain. I propose amphitheaters, arenas for games, debates, and displays of magic and might. The dead need not be silent. Let them laugh, weep, and marvel. Let the gods above envy our revelry. Hades nodded. Agreed. We will build halls of performance and celebration. And a grand temple to Nyx. She must be honored here. Hera arched an eyebrow but said nothing. Hecate leaned forward. Libraries. Archives of both the living and the dead. A place where knowledge is preserved, where divine secrets are kept. Let the underworld be the memory of the cosmos. Hades thought for a moment and nodded. We can ask Lethe to compile the memories of every soul that arrives in the underworld into books. I also want a throne hall, Hera said. Not just for you, Hades, but for all major underworld gods. Let them feel their place in your reign. Hecate added, then build a sanctuary for the 5 rivers as well, each river god honored with their own domain, and bridges of black crystal that cross their streams. Hades tapped the papyrus, sketching runes and layouts as they spoke. We will need a place for judgment, he said. A grand tribunal where souls are weighed and destinies declared. And prisons, containment cells for the wicked and the cursed. Tartarus shall remain beneath, but this city will oversee it. We should plant gardens, Hera mused. Let the dead remember the beauty of life. Fields of asphodel, groves of nightbloom trees. Not just cold stone and shadow. I remember Minth, daughter of Cocytus, has been studying with Demeter in the past 3 years to bring Overworld's flora, but with little to no results. That one might be hard. Hera hummed but said nothing. Hecate added, let's put that aside for a moment. For now, I think towers for oracles are needed. Let messages pass between worlds. Let the dead whisper to the living. Let dreams bloom here. Hades glanced between them both. He did not speak, but in his eyes there was the quiet fire of inspiration, no longer just a king of shadows, but a creator shaping the future. They talked for hours, ideas pouring like rivers of imagination. A divine market, where gods could trade relics and knowledge. A dome for stargazing, enchanted to reflect the skies of the living. Monuments to great heroes, a mausoleum of the honored dead. Even hidden sanctuaries where weary gods could rest undisturbed. Eventually, Hades rolled up the papyrus. This city, this monument, will be called Nox. A place of silence and song, of judgment and joy. The true heart of the underworld. Why do I feel like it's a homage to Lady Nyx? Hecate whispered. Hera narrowed her eyes. You seem to be a bit obsessed with the primordial of the night, brother. Hades remained silent. He will not dignify that with a response. Not wanting to continue this conversation, Hades immediately chose to change the topic. I want to make a council. He turned towards them, a council where we decide the future direction of the underworld and how to improve it. Hera blinked. Like the Olympian Council? Right, Hera remembered that she is actually part of that council. After all, even though she is to be the queen of the underworld, it won't hurt to have authority in the overworld as well. Yes, like that. Hades nodded. Each one will manage a certain field and make sure everything is in order. But why? Asked Hecate. The underworld is yours to command. Unlike the overworld with various domains, sky, sea, mountains, and rivers. The underworld is the underworld. Ruling the underworld means ruling over all underworld gods. In the overworld, although Zeus is hailed as the king of gods, it doesn't mean he can rule over every god. He just has the largest domain, but that doesn't mean he has absolute authority. The overworld still has Poseidon, who is the king of the seas and has authority that can contend with Zeus. Not to mention there are also various titans and primordials who can completely disregard Zeus' authority. Although there are also various beings in the underworld that refuse to submit to Hades, as the king of the underworld, if he wanted to, he could exert his authority to command them. Even Tartarus is no exception. I want to separate the underworld into different sections. Said Hades, it will make it easier to manage if we have a council. Hecate and Hera remained silent, waiting for him to finish. The outer section, Hades said, his tone darkening slightly, will be a land of infinite barren sand. There, souls who committed great sins in life shall wander, tormented not by flame, but by emptiness, by the weight of their own actions. Hecate revealed a small smile. I think it would be better if they had consciousness but couldn't control their bodies. They will also experience never-ending hunger, forever wandering the endless sand looking for something. Hades looked at her. I think we don't need to do that. But I do want to create something that could convert their sins into a power source, which would be used for the nourishment of the underworld. Once their sins are all gone, they can be reincarnated. Acheron, Cocytus, and Phlegethon can do something similar to that, said Hecate. They convert the pain and suffering of the souls that are trapped in their rivers into their own power. They will then turn those souls into warriors under their command. Then, I will have to ask them about this matter soon. Hades whispered to himself. Then, he continued. After that will be the intersection. It will be a place of peace. Here, ordinary souls will live out their afterlife. No judgment. No punishment. Just serenity. And if they desire reincarnation, they shall be given the chance. Hera stepped forward, her eyes calm but bright. It's a beautiful idea. Peace after death. Too long has that been denied to mortals. Hecate nodded. We'll need someone to guide the souls here. Help them settle, process their memories, and ease the transition. I've thought of that, Hades said. Lethe will take charge of memory. And Hera can manage orientation and housing. I'll see to their elevation when the city is complete. Hera smiled. I will live up to your trust, brother. Then, he turned toward the skies above, where his floating fortress loomed like a black sun. And the core section, he said slowly, as I have said earlier, shall be a realm unlike any other. A divine city. A nexus of power, learning, and beauty. Only the greatest souls shall live here. Heroes, saints, philosophers, poets, warriors who fought for something greater than themselves. He turned his gaze back to the two goddesses. This will also be home to divine spirits and minor gods. Those who dwell in the core may earn the right to ascend, to become gods in their own right. Hecate smiled, her eyes gleaming. A forge of divinity. Yes, Hades said. A place where greatness is nurtured. A place of endless potential. Hera crossed her arms. That sounds grand, but I still see no point for a council. Hades sighed. Well, I want the intersection to be infinitely large, with various biomes and locations, so that souls may enjoy going to places they've never been to when they are alive. I want the council to manage various parts of the intersection. I can't do all that. Well, that's understandable. Hera nodded. So, do you have any candidate for this council of yours, brother? Hades smiled but said nothing. Of course Hera and Hecate will have a seat. The same goes for the 5 river gods. However, he also plans on recruiting those reclusive gods who didn't want to show themselves and bringing them under his command: Erebus, Thanatos, Charis, the Morais. The underworld is full of ancient and powerful beings beyond comprehension. Those overworld gods were lucky that the powerful beings in the underworld didn't want any trouble. If not, one insult would surely bring the wrath of several primordial class beings and wreak havoc in the overworld. Well, before that, let's start building the city. Hades stared at the vast plains that will soon be his domain. The war is over now. It is time to truly rule the land of the dead. Decades had passed since the underworld had been reshaped under the rule of Hades. What once was an empty void cloaked in eternal gloom had become a thriving realm with cities forged in obsidian and crystal, biomes that mimicked the mortal world, with the exception of fauna and flora, as the underworld still couldn't sustain life, and an intricate circulation system for souls. It had become a realm of judgment, reward, and punishment, divided into 3 sacred regions: the outer section for the damned, the inner section for ordinary souls, and the core section, the very heart of the underworld, where gods, divine spirits, and great souls dwelled. From the hanging fortress that floated above it all, Hades could see his kingdom in motion, souls moving like rivers, divine spirits maintaining order, and his laws being upheld with unwavering discipline. And yet, despite the order and progress, Hades sat on his throne rubbing his temples, his face slightly twisted in frustration. "My lord," Styx said, standing in front of the throne with arms crossed. Her long silver hair shimmered like moonlight, and her expression was as cold and pale as ever. "Please, give us permission to wipe them out of existence. They are swarming the outer riverbanks. Charon is at his limit. These creatures die faster than we can judge them." "Idiots. The lot of them," snapped Charon from behind her. The skeletal ferryman slammed his oar to the floor. "They drown in puddles, fall off cliffs, eat poisonous fruits, and fight beasts with sticks. What kind of design is this? I've had to turn my boat into a floating mass grave just to carry them." Hades let out a low sigh. "I have no idea what creature you are referring to." "Prometheus's new creation," Styx informed. "He calls those hairless monkeys humans." Charon muttered, "Even monkeys aren't as dumb as them. They at least knew how to climb trees to look for food. Those humans just know how to die." A soft scoff came from beside Hades. Hera, lounging on her chair beside his obsidian throne, draped in a flowing violet gown, opened a projection showing humanity. "And here I thought the Titans were bad. What a ridiculous race. Ugly, loud, and pathetically fragile. What was Prometheus thinking? She absolutely finds 0 redeeming qualities for this race. They'd probably die out and go extinct in another few years or so." Hades tilted his head toward her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I wouldn't say that. Prometheus is a crafty and shrewd individual. His creation would surely not just remain at this level. I believe they have a lot of potential." He believed that. After all, he was once a human from the modern era. Without the help of gods or divine interference, humanity conquered the sea, land, and air and has set its eyes on the vast ocean of stars. They are not the strongest, they are not the toughest, but they stood at the apex of Earth's creation. Hera rolled her eyes. Potential for more stupidity, perhaps. One of them died because he smacked his head with a rock. Hades chuckled. Then tell me, did any other humans die the same way as that guy? Hera paused, observing the projection. None. Exactly, Hades nodded. They learn from their mistakes and improve, adapt, and evolve. Hera listened, feeling that what Hades said did make sense. But, yeah, well, perhaps what you said will come true, if they don't end up killing themselves, that is. Hades smiled. Trust me, they are born to inherit the stars. Sharon groaned. Then may the stars have mercy on us all. Hades ignored him and stood up, stepping forward, his dark robes trailing behind him like shadows. He approached the balcony that overlooked the core section of the underworld, where black towers touched the endless sky and glowing rivers of souls flowed like veins through the land. I knew this day would come, he murmured. And I believe Prometheus would soon cause trouble. Styx raised an eyebrow. Trouble? Hades nodded. Yes. Just my intuition, but I think Prometheus will not stop here. Sly as he is, he cares for all his creations. Seeing the suffering of humanity, he will not sit idly by. Hera narrowed her eyes, pondering for a moment. He won't plan to steal the gift of fire, will he? The gift of fire is a talent usually reserved for the Olympian gods. It was made by Hestia to bring order and advancement to their rule. That's what I thought as well, Hades nodded at her. With fire, they will rise beyond their limits. They will craft, they will build, and they will learn. And they will suffer. They're suffering already, muttered Sharon. Everyone ignored him. Hera stood as well, walking to Hades' side. And what will we do if he really does? Shall we stop him? No, Hades replied after a pause. Not to mention I have already said I will not interfere with the affairs of the overworld, but I believe that this gift would be far more suitable for humanity. His voice echoed slightly, filled with solemn weight. That's why we must not stop it. Instead, we must prepare. Styx's gray eyes sharpened. Prepare. Hades turned, gazing at Hera, Styx, and the weary ferryman. The underworld is their end, but also their mirror. If mankind is to walk the world above, then we must evolve alongside them. There must be new systems for their judgment, new laws to contain their chaos, and new spirits who can guide them. Hera looked skeptical, but she said nothing. Hades lifted a hand, summoning a ghostly flame that hovered above his palm. It pulsed faintly, then flickered, reshaping itself into a tiny humanoid figure. A soul. Each one of them holds something divine, Hades said quietly. Not in strength, nor in wisdom, but in will. The will to defy even us. He let the flame drift upward, and it disappeared into the sky of the underworld. Very well, Hera said, arms crossed. But when they start burning down forests or trying to kill each other over rocks, don't say I didn't warn you. Hades flinched. His mind drifted to the atrocities committed by humanity. On second thought, maybe it's better for them to die out? Styx sighed. Then I'll need new guardians for the outer section. Ones who can keep up with this madness. You'll have them, Hades promised. He already has a few candidates in mind. Sharon grunted. And I'll need more boats. Hades cracked a rare smile. You'll have an entire fleet. As the complaints echoed through the hall, the Lord of the Underworld turned his gaze once more to the darkness above. Somewhere, in the overworld, Prometheus was preparing for his theft. The Age of Gods was no longer the only story being written. A new chapter was beginning. One forged not by titans or primordial powers, but by mortal hands. In the deepest folds of the underworld in Tartarus, where time was no more than a breath and space coiled in on itself like a serpent, Nyx stirred from the afterglow of her short moment of passion with Hades. She had stayed in her bed longer than she intended. Too long, perhaps. Her essence still shimmered with the remnants of her union with Hades, the god whose silence had spoken to the very core of her infinite being. She had felt whole, complete, in a way she had never imagined. A graceful smile formed on her lips as she sat up, intending to observe what her fated one has been up to lately. But then, she felt a flicker. A tremor in the fabric of the cosmos. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at the edge of infinity. Mere distance seemed to not exist under her eyes. Then, her form, still cloaked in shadow and beauty, rippled once, and in the next moment, she was gone. The stars bent around her as she crossed the heavens in an instant, arriving at the very edge of the universe, the scarred battlefield where Hades had slain Uranus long ago. The remnants of the great primordial's essence still whispered through the dark, like the sighs of a dying immortal. But Nyx's gaze was fixed elsewhere. There, hovering between strands of nothingness, was a crack. Thin. Almost imperceptible. But to a primordial, such imperfections were louder than thunder. Her brows furrowed. Since when? When did this crack appear? Hades and Uranus clash shouldn't have produced enough power to cause a crack at the boundary of the universe. But she didn't spend too much time dwelling on it for too long. Instead, she raised her hand, pale as starlight, and snapped her fingers. Reality shivered. The crack sealed instantly, threads of cosmic matter weaving themselves together like silk pulled taut. Nyx remained still for a moment, her face unreadable. Her shadows gathered around her, more restless than before. "How did I not see this sooner?" she whispered, her voice soft but layered with power, echoing through the emptiness. The void offered no answer. She floated there, timeless and alone, her long hair drifting like a river of night across the stars. Then, she touched the space where the crack had been, frowning deeper. "I see, so it's that. But it isn't the time yet," she muttered, more to herself than to the cosmos. "You are far too eager." She knew that something had entered this universe, something that she is quite familiar with. For now, it managed to hide its presence quite well. Perhaps it knew that she would show no mercy and would erase it as soon as she saw it. Her eyes turned downward. Past the stars. Past the celestial veil. Past the shifting winds of chaos. Her gaze locked on Earth. The blue planet spun silently, unaware of the danger looming beyond the stars. "I don't know how many times this makes. Perhaps I should meet with Kronos and discuss this event with him." She vanished again, melting into the darkness like ink spilled into water. The universe shuddered once more, then fell silent. But far below, beneath the sky, a new story had already begun. And something that did not belong was already watching. Prometheus strode through the grand hall of Mount Olympus, his bare feet echoing softly against the marble floor, polished by years of divine celebration and excess. The golden pillars stretched toward the heavens like the bones of titans, and the air itself pulsed with intoxicating music and the scent of divine wine. Around him, gods and goddesses reveled without restraint, drunk on power, lust, and victory. Laughter echoed, mixed with moans and the soft clinking of goblets. Divine bodies writhed in corners, tangled in euphoric embraces. A satyr played the pan flute while a minor river goddess danced without care, her long silver veil discarded. But Prometheus did not look. He didn't stop. Even when a goddess reached out to him with slurred laughter and glowing eyes, he gave her a courteous nod and walked past. One offered him a goblet of ambrosia. Another whispered a promise in his ear, tugging gently on his arm. He ignored them all. His stride was graceful and deliberate. He was here for a mission. One born not of pride or rebellion, but of love, for mortals not yet worthy, for a future not yet forged. And he would pay the price. He already knew what his defiance would cost. He had seen it in countless glimpses of possible futures. Chains. Fire. Agony. Centuries. No, an eternity of torment. But to him, the pain was worth it. Because tonight, he would give mankind a chance to stand. He reached the center of Olympus. The room was quiet, undisturbed by the noise of the feast. Here, beneath an open dome that framed the stars above, burned the sacred flame, a golden fire that danced in a divine brazier carved from starlight and titan bone. It flickered gently, elegant and eternal, its radiance bathing the chamber in warmth and gold. This was the flame that marked the blessing of the Olympians, the sacred source of their majesty and divine spark. It burned without consuming and gave without end, but only to gods, never to mortals. Prometheus paused, gazing at it. The fire danced as though it recognized him. A smirk crept across his face. He extended his hand, and the flame responded like an old friend, leaping into his palm without resistance. It didn't burn him. It curled around his fingers like silk, wrapping around his arm and settling inside his chest. A heartbeat of silence followed. Then, it was done. The brazier was empty, and the divine flame of Olympus was gone. Prometheus turned around calmly, his face composed, almost amused. He walked out of the chamber with the same lazy swagger he had entered with, gently brushing off a drunken satyr who stumbled into him. As he re-entered the grand hall, music still played. Gods still danced. No one noticed. No one cared. He raised a goblet someone handed him and toasted the sky with a chuckle. "To chaos," he whispered. Then, like a shadow through mist, he slipped away from Olympus. No alarms. No wrathful gods. Not yet. He had the flame now. The key to the future. The light that would ignite the age of Mun. As he descended from the mountain, his eyes flicked toward the mortal world far below. The shivers are due to cold. The cries of infants. The weak. The hungry. The lost. But not for long. "Let this flame burn you, my children," he said to no one, "and one day, shine brighter than any gods and titans alike." The sky trembled. The age of gods had been secured by war. But now, the age of mortals was about to begin. And it would begin with fire. The sacred chamber trembled as a shrill cry echoed across the marble halls of Olympus. "Ea! The flame is gone." A young divine spirit, robes fluttering and eyes wide with horror, bolted from the chamber at the heart of Olympus, where the sacred flame had burned for eons. He stumbled past drunken gods and startled nymphs, shouting in panic as he ran toward the center of the ongoing feast. The sacred flame has been stolen. The music stopped. Goblets slipped from fingers. Faces turned pale. Even those lost in intoxicated pleasure froze, the realization of what had been said slamming into them like a tidal wave. The sacred flame of Olympus, the divine fire that blessed the gods, had vanished. Dozens of gods rushed toward the heart of Olympus, flowing like a golden tide toward the center chamber. Their footsteps pounded in unison, a stampede of fury and disbelief. And standing at the head of them all was Zeus. He marched with eyes already burning blue-white with stormlight, his aura crackling with divine authority. The air around him warped from the sheer force of his rage. When he arrived at the chamber and saw the empty brazier, he didn't say a word, not at first. He stared. And then, thunder boomed through Olympus. A bolt of lightning tore through the clouds above, shaking the mountain to its very roots. Zeus turned, his voice booming like the sky splitting open. Who dared? The divine spirit who had discovered the theft cowered before the king of the gods. He dropped to his knees, trembling as Zeus's heavy footsteps approached. I was only cleaning the chamber, my lord. I swear, I saw nothing. I only noticed when I turned around and— Silence, Zeus growled. In a flash of fury, Zeus grabbed the spirit by the hair and slammed his head into the marble floor, cracking it beneath the weight. The gathered gods gasped. Some turned away, others watched in grim silence. The divine spirit whimpered in pain, blood trickling down his face. Please, my lord. I don't know who did it. I swear it. Zeus released him and rose to his full height, his golden hair whipping in the wind stirred by his own divinity. His voice roared across the mountain like a storm crashing against cliffs. Everyone, find the culprit. His voice echoed through the heavens, heard by birds in flight and waves below. I want Olympus searched. Every god, every spirit, every crevice. Tear this place apart if you must. The one who dare defile the sacred flame will suffer a punishment that will echo through eternity. Behind him, the gods and spirits scrambled into action, flying, sprinting, and teleporting, fanning out across Olympus in a frenzy. The skies darkened above the mountain as Zeus remained in the chamber, fists clenched, his jaw tight. He didn't know who had done it. But he would. And when he found them, not even chaos itself would offer them mercy. Prometheus walked through a quiet glade, high up on a ridge that overlooked the savage wilds below. The sky was still tinged gold with the glow of Olympus far behind him, though that light would soon flicker. He could already imagine the chaos erupting, gods screaming, accusations flying, and thunder roaring. He chuckled to himself, humming an old Titan melody, each step light and carefree. The sacred golden flame, once a symbol of Olympian dominion, now danced silently within his fingertips, its divine power carefully veiled. He twirled it once, like a child with a toy, then continued his descent. Below him, spread across the plains and forests, were the first humans. They were crude and hunched, their speech still guttural and unshaped. Their hands were dirty, their skin marked by the harshness of the world. They lacked tools, shelter, and understanding. And yet, Prometheus could see it. The potential in their eyes. Flickering, like sparks waiting for flame. As he approached, some of the humans shrank away, and others picked up rocks or sticks, growling low in fear. They did not know who he was. They barely understood what a god even meant. But they felt his presence. They felt the divinity that clung to him like the scent of a storm before rain. Prometheus lifted both hands, smiling gently. Peace, little ones. I bring no harm. The humans hesitated. One, bolder than the rest, stepped forward, baring his teeth and grunting. Prometheus crouched before him, his smile never fading. You do not understand my words now. But you will. In time, you'll speak in thousands of tongues, shape kingdoms, and write poetry and prophecy. He tapped the man gently on the chest. And all of it will begin with this. He opened his palm under the watchful eyes of humanity. The golden flame, Olympus's sacred fire, roared into life before them. The humans gasped, some recoiling, others entranced, while a few were curious. They had never seen such a thing. The fire warmed their faces and cast dancing shadows behind their hollow eyes. It flickered and cracked, not like wildfires or lightning strikes, but controlled, alive. Warmth, Prometheus whispered. A light. Knowledge. Civilization. This is yours now. He stood, watching their awe. Use it well. Grow. Create. Rise above beasts and stone. One day, you will carve roads across oceans and lift your eyes to the stars. He turned, already walking away as the flame took root among them, spreading slowly as the boldest reached toward it, tentative and curious. Prometheus didn't look back. He didn't need to. His grin widened as he hummed again, staff tapping against the earth. Let them search Olympus all they want, he muttered. The future has already begun. And behind him, in the wild cradle of the world, the age of men was born. In the deepest reaches of the cosmos, beneath the world of mortals and the divine halls of Olympus, the underworld thrived, a realm of solemn beauty and haunting quiet. Here, shadows moved with purpose, and the souls of the departed wandered through fields of eternity, each destination a reflection of their life's worth. At the heart of it all stood Hades, the king of the underworld, perched on his obsidian throne high in his floating fortress. But on this day, Hades was not the composed and regal god everyone revered. He sat behind a desk buried under papyrus scrolls, divine petitions, complaints, and architectural drafts from gods requesting expansions to their personal sanctums. Lord Hades, a divine spirit barged in, clutching a new scroll. The gods of the northern plains are asking for more rain and storms. They claim the desert winds are drying their divine wine reserves. Hades pressed his fingers against his temples and exhaled. Tell them to drink something else. Before the spirit could leave, another one entered. My lord, there are disputes over the entertainment halls. Heraeus' troupe is too loud, and Morpheus says he couldn't concentrate on making dreams. Hades' cheek twitched, but before he could even say another word, another divine spirit barged in. My lord, Morpheus was unable to make proper dreams, which led to many mortals suffering from nightmares. Many even died as a result. Hades was starting to regret ever choosing to rule this realm. Then, a beat later, before he could even react, another divine spirit barged in. My lord, due to mortals dying of nightmares, more souls have arrived than we've accounted for. The reincarnation channels are clogged again. Hades slumped in his seat, staring blankly at the mountain of problems that grew larger with each passing second. He had expected the underworld to be a realm of order and solemnity, but ever since he decided to completely reform the realm, and with humans now dying at an absurd rate, it was anything but peaceful. Had it not been for Hecate and Hera, who tirelessly patrolled the domain, resolved divine disputes, and ensured the system of judgment ran smoothly, Hades might have simply turned himself into stone and become a statue of quiet resistance. I'm going bald at this rate. Not even 1,000 years old, and I'm already going bald. Before he could dwell further in his stress, a divine spirit burst through the heavy doors of his office, face pale and eyes wide. My lord, you must come at once. Lady Minth has something important to tell you. Hades blinked, tired beyond words. Did she say anything? She said it's a surprise, my lord. the spirit replied. I know nothing else, but she urged you to see her as soon as possible. With a heavy sigh, Hades rose, throwing on his dark cloak. He followed the spirit out of his towering halls, through corridors bathed in quiet blue fire, and into the great open courtyard of his fortress. There, standing at the center of the marble yard, bathed in a shaft of pale underworld light, was a woman with flowing green hair and quiet confidence. She cradled something in her arms, something green. Hades stopped, his eyes widened in shock. Life. Living. Thriving plant life. He approached cautiously, the scent striking him before he even saw it fully. The sharp, fresh aroma of mint, clear as memory, real as touch. The woman looked up and smiled. Lord Hades, it seems I've succeeded. Mint, what? He asked, surprised. What is that? She extended the plant to him. Its vibrant green leaves shimmered faintly, the moisture glistening like dew under the perpetual twilight. A plant, she said simply. One that grows, here. So it's true. It's not an illusion, nor is it a cheap imitation. Hades muttered, circling her. No natural flora grows in the underworld. Even Demeter couldn't make it happen. But you did it. Minth nodded. It wasn't easy. I used what Lady Demeter left me before she departed. Notes, mostly, her theories on soil conversion, energy harmonization, and life-rooting essence. It took decades. But I found a way. Hades stared at the sprout with awe, cautious yet drawn to it. How did you manage the life essence? I used part of the river Lethe's water to stabilize it. I bound it with the breath of dreams, taken from Hypnos domain. Then, I embedded it in soil blessed by your aura. Hades blinked. My aura. Minth smiled softly. You've ruled here long enough that this land responds to you, my lord. You've changed it. He looked at the plant again. Something stirred within him, something distant, almost forgotten. In his past life, before this existence, when he was a mortal soul living an ordinary life, he had tended to a small mint plant. It had sat on his kitchen window, fragile and green, offering him the only scent of freshness in a gray life. He had long forgotten it, until now. He touched the leaf. What have you named it? Minth tilted her head. I haven't. I thought you might want to. Hades smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth softening for the first time in days. Then I name it Mint, after you. This plant shall be a symbol of my domain, rare, enduring, and powerful. Minth's eyes widened. You honor me, my lord. No, Hades said quietly, still staring at the mint. You honor me, more than you realize. The divine spirits watching from the sides murmured. For the first time in the long and solemn history of the underworld, life had found a way to bloom. And its king, weary and heavy-hearted, found something that reminded him of forgotten joy. He gently handed the plant back to Minth, the cool touch of the leaves still tingling in his hand. Plant it in the gardens beside the obsidian stream. Let it grow as a testament that even in the deepest shadows, life can exist. Minth bowed and turned to carry out his command. As she disappeared down the marble steps with her miracle in hand, a divine spirit approached, having watched from the distance. You seem lighter, my lord, he commented. It feels like a heavy load was gone from your shoulders. Really? Well, I feel like I just remembered something important, Hades replied. Something small, but comforting. A small smile appeared on his face. The divine spirit raised a brow. Are we going to start planting flowers now, my lord? Hades shrugs, staring at the sky. Perhaps one. Just one. At this moment, another divine spirit came running in. My lord, please return to your duties. More work has piled up since you left moments ago. Hades sighed, but this time, he didn't feel quite so overwhelmed. He looked once more toward the fading figure of Minth. Let them wait, he said. Just for a little while. Oh, he's going to regret those words soon enough. The grand halls of Olympus, once echoing with songs of glory and celebration, now trembled with tension. Thunder rolled across its golden ceilings, and the divine spirits dared not speak above a whisper. The once never-ending feast was over, replaced by silence and fear. At the heart of this storm sat Zeus, the king of the gods, his storm-colored eyes smoldering with barely contained rage. A divine spirit knelt before him, trembling. "My lord Zeus," the spirit began, voice strained. "We have discovered evidence, clear traces of Prometheus within the sacred hall where the divine flame was kept." For a brief moment, silence reigned. Then, with a crack like the heavens shattering, Zeus's throne erupted with light. He surged to his feet, lightning dancing from his shoulders. The force of his fury caused the marble beneath him to splinter. "Prometheus." He growled, the name like poison on his tongue. So it was him. That man was always so sly. The divine spirit dared not look up. Zeus's jaw tightened, nostrils flared with divine indignation. "He entered my sacred hall. He dared touch the flame that sanctifies Olympus itself." His voice trembled with fury, the sky roaring in anger. "He stole it. He, whom I once granted mercy. He, who walks beneath my sky, defied me." He turned sharply toward the kneeling spirit. "Find him. Now." Zeus thundered. "Tear Olympus apart if you must. Search the skies, the mountains, the mortal world. I want Prometheus brought before me, in chains." Of course, no matter how angry he was, he dared not send any force to search in the underworld. He doesn't want to find out what Hades would do to him if he found his forces in his realm. The spirit bowed low. "Yes, my lord." And with that, he vanished in a shimmer of golden light. Zeus returned to his throne, his fingers clenching the armrests until cracks ran through the ivory. His pride, his divine image, had been wounded. Before the eyes of every god, a thief had entered his heart of power and succeeded. This was no minor misstep. This was an insult. This was a rebellion. And for that, Prometheus would pay. 1,000 punishments passed through his mind, each more cruel and theatrical than the last. This could not be a quiet judgment. No, this had to be a lesson carved into the bones of time. Let all the gods and mortals watch. Let them witness what happens when one dares to stand against Olympus. Against him. Zeus's eyes narrowed as he stared out from his throne, lightning flickering in his pupils. "You think you can get away with this, Prometheus?" he muttered. "Think again, you've only lit the fire of your own damnation." And high above, thunder cracked through a clear sky, as if the heavens themselves swore vengeance. High upon a lush and verdant mountain, a paradise bloomed under Demeter's careful hands. Once a cold, barren peak, it now flourished with endless rows of wildflowers, golden grains, and experimental flora that hummed with divine vitality. Bees flitted through the air, birds sang sweet songs, and the wind carried the fragrance of new life. At the heart of it all stood Demeter, her hands glowing with gentle green light as she coaxed a new type of plant from the soil. Its leaves shimmered like emerald silk, and its blossoms radiated warmth like the early spring sun. Just as she leaned closer to admire her creation, a sudden swirl of purple mist appeared before her. It drifted through the breeze like a wisp of dream smoke, coalescing into a tightly rolled scroll. Demeter blinked, straightened, and carefully caught the scroll before it touched the ground. This mist, it must be Hecate. Unrolling it, she read in silence. She was expecting a greeting. She was expecting a request. She expected many things, but this letter was not one of the many things she was expecting. Her eyes widened. She read it again. This time, slowly and carefully. She didn't misread it. It was really true. A plant, in the underworld? That's... She gasped, one hand covering her mouth. Impossible. Her thoughts raced. No plant, not even one of her most sacred seeds, had ever survived long in that realm of shadows. The land of the dead rejected life on a fundamental level. And yet, this scroll claimed otherwise. She recognized the divinity left in the scroll and knew it was written by Hades, so she knew that this wasn't a joke. Hades wasn't one to joke about serious matters. The other reason for her surprise is that the one who actually managed to create life in the underworld was Minth, the nymph daughter of Cocytus. Demeter's expression softened, surprise melting into a bittersweet smile. Minth. The quiet, curious nymph who had spent those years in the underworld learning, researching, and asking questions of her. They had shared long conversations in the dim groves of the underworld, speaking of seeds, of plants, of cycles of harvest and planting. Demeter's heart stirred. I must see this with my own eyes. She was curious. What kind of plant can actually break the laws of the underworld and grow? She turned sharply and clapped her hands once. A gentle wind responded, carrying her voice to every corner of her cultivated mountain. From the fields and groves, her handmaidens came, graceful nymphs and gentle divine spirits, each marked by the fresh scents of fruit, earth, and flower. Girls, Demeter called out, rolling the scroll back up. An urgent matter calls me to the underworld. I entrust this mountain to you in my absence. The handmaidens bowed. As you will, Lady Demeter. See to the flowering groves and the seedling fields, and ensure that the new roots are tended. I do not know how long I will be gone, but I will return. The mountain responded to her words, the flowers nodding in the breeze, as if they too understood. With one final look at her newest creation, Demeter closed her eyes and summoned her divine essence. Her form shimmered with golden light before dissolving into a flurry of falling petals. The petals floated upward, caught in an unseen current, piercing through the veil that separated realms. Down, down they drifted, crossing into the land where no bloom was meant to take root. The underworld. And for the first time in ages, the goddess of harvest would walk its soil once again. Prometheus sat quietly in the heart of a secluded cave, its walls smoothed by time and divine presence. A crimson flame flickered softly before him, casting red light across the stone floor, but his eyes were not on the flame. They were elsewhere, far, far away, tracing the paths of mortals as they stumbled into a new era. Through his divine sight, he watched them, humans, once little more than fearful, shivering beasts. Now they crouched beside fire pits, chipping stones into sharper blades, their eyes alight with curiosity. They spoke crude words, shaped tribes, and even now were scratching patterns into cave walls, early whispers of the written word. Prometheus smiled. A woman knelt near the fire, teaching a child how to feed it with dry wood. A man not far away tied a sharpened stone to a branch with sinew. Another group hunted with coordination, marking a leap in their understanding of strategy. They begin, he whispered to the flames. Soon, they will shape metal from ore. Then, they will plant seeds and tame beasts. They will look to the stars and wonder, and someday, they'll reach them. His smile faded slightly, not with sorrow, but acceptance. But I will not be there to see it. He had known from the start. Even before he touched Olympus' sacred flame, before he stepped into the hall of golden fire, he had seen the price he would pay. The futures had unfolded like scrolls before him, and all bore the same consequence. His capture and punishment. Just then, a tremor rolled through the earth. His divine senses prickled, an overwhelming pressure descending from above, like a storm of authority and judgment. They were here. He didn't flinch. He simply stood and dusted off his robe, the firelight tracing the lines of his calm, almost amused expression. Outside the cave, the very heavens seemed to hum. The ground rumbled faintly, and the light dimmed as divine auras closed him like a great net. Prometheus stepped out into the open, sunlight cascading over his shoulders. They waited for him, a dozen greater gods, champions of Olympus, veterans of the Titanomachy. Their faces were stern, forged from divine law and loyalty to Zeus. Many had once fought alongside Prometheus in the ancient war, when titans and gods clashed for dominion. Now, their weapons were drawn, blades, spears, and sacred staves glowing with the wrath of Olympus, and all of it pointed at him, once their comrade in arms. At their center stood a figure in golden armor, a laurel circlet gleaming atop his head. "Halt, Prometheus," the god commanded, his voice like rolling thunder. "By order of Zeus, king of Olympus, you are to surrender yourself. You stand accused of high treason, stealing the divine flame and giving it to mortals that you favor." Prometheus gazed at them, eyes calm and clear. "I know." He had seen this happen in one too many futures, and he was getting tired of it. "Then you will come with us peacefully?" asked the god, pointing his spear at him. A pause. Then a low, knowing chuckle escaped Prometheus' lips. "Of course," he stared at them, "I will happily cooperate." The god stared at him, momentarily stunned by the ease of his surrender. "No excuses," one muttered, tightening their grip on a weapon. "No," Prometheus replied, stepping forward with open hands. "No excuses. I gave humanity what they needed. That was my purpose. That was my choice." He walked into their midst like a teacher returning to a quiet classroom, unafraid, unashamed. He's not even resisting, one god frowned, thinking if this was a trap. Prometheus blinked and chuckled at him. Oh, do you like a little resistance? I could squirm if you like. The god twitched, his eyes glaring at Prometheus. The rumors were true. This man was incredibly infuriating. Don't talk to the prisoner. Another god exclaimed as he proceeded to cuff the Titan. Ouch! Prometheus faked pain. Mr. Titan, I think I need to go to the infirmary. I'll complain about your behavior. As if. Another god slammed his head to the ground. Just obediently follow our words. At this, Prometheus nonchalantly stopped smiling, and his playful eyes disappeared. He stared them in the eyes. You may shackle me, chain me, bind me to the farthest mountain. It doesn't matter, he continued, glancing at the distant sky. The fire has already been lit. You can't unburn the world. Gaia was a terrifying figure. It is by her grace that Olympus and the gods can still fight for the petty soul master. The leading god scowled, signaling the others. Divine chains, forged in the celestial furnaces, slithered like living metal around Prometheus' wrists and ankles. A heavy collar closed around his neck, inscribed with symbols that muted divine power. Still, he smiled. One god, younger than the others, couldn't help but ask, why? Why would you risk everything for them? Those mortals don't deserve it. Prometheus turned his head slightly, eyes meeting the youth's. Because they are the only ones who must earn their place. Not born with divinity, not gifted immortality. Every step they take is a triumph over the impossible. And in that struggle, they will surpass us all. The god said nothing. With a single gesture, the air shimmered, and a portal to Olympus opened, the light blinding in its intensity. Prometheus, bound yet unbound, stepped forward willingly. His punishment awaited. But so too did the rise of mankind. By the quiet shores of the river Styx, the underworld was bathed in a rare moment of serenity. The current flowed lazily, its dark waters reflecting the glow of the realm's ever-hanging twilight. Hades sat comfortably in a sleek black stone chair, carved by his own hand, his elbow resting on the armrest, chin propped lazily against his palm. Beside him stood the ever-stoic Styx, her silver hair cascading like moonlight as she gently fanned him with a broad obsidian leaf. Though it was more out of formality than necessity, gods didn't sweat, nor do they feel hot or cold. Her expression was as flat as the river she ruled. Any harder, Styx, Hades muttered dryly, and I might be blown into Tartarus. Styx didn't answer. She simply blinked once, unimpressed. On his other side, Hera reclined on a smaller cushioned chair, daintily feeding him peeled grapes, though the underworld's version of grapes were silvery and glowed faintly. She plucked one and teasingly hovered it near his lips. Open up, king of the dead, she said with a smile. You've been working so hard you might shrivel into bones. I'm already halfway there, Hades grumbled, eating the grape anyway. The bureaucracy down here is more terrifying than the Titans. A short distance away, Demeter knelt in the soil, her hands stained with dark earth. Minth knelt beside her, equally absorbed in the task of carefully planting a line of newly thriving mint plants, the first flora to ever take root in the underworld. And you said this wouldn't work, Minth said proudly, nudging Demeter with her elbow. Demeter rolled her eyes but smiled. Only because I've tried for decades and failed. You, my dear, may have a greener thumb than the goddess of harvest herself. Minth beamed. Maybe I'll start a garden down here, and I'll call it Minth and Hades' Love Garden? Demeter whispered. Minth blushed red as she playfully punched Demeter on the shoulders. Demeter laughed before brushing some dirt on Minth's cheek. This annoyed Minth, who grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it at Demeter's face. Demeter wiped off the dirt from her face and smiled gently. Minth gulped. She shouldn't have done that. Wait, calm down, let's talk about this. Off to the side, Hecate stood silently with arms crossed, watching the two plant lovers play around with dirt. You two should add nightshade, she commented. Something poisonous. It'll add flair. Minth and Demeter stopped, turning towards Hecate. Only you would suggest that, Minth replied. Demeter nodded beside her. Of course, Hecate said, cracking a rare smile. This is the underworld. We don't do daisies. Hades chuckled under his breath. If we do, They'll have skulls and screaming. Demeter looked up. Don't tempt me, brother. I could make that happen. Just as they all started to laugh, finally enjoying a sliver of peace in the shadowed realm, a divine spirit came barreling down the slope leading to the riverside, his robes in disarray and golden sandals flapping loudly. Lord Hades! Lord Hades! He cried out, nearly tripping over a root. In his hands, he held a shimmering golden scroll, its seal blazing with the sigil of Olympus. Styx, without turning her head, moved slightly to block the rushing spirit. Slow down. You're making waves in my river. The divine spirit skidded to a halt, panting. A letter, my lord. From Olympus. A divine spirit handed it to me at the gates. Hades groaned, rubbing his temples. It's always Olympus. I've only just managed to clear my desk from the last mountain of complaints. Hera gracefully took the scroll from the spirit and broke the seal. Shall I read it aloud? She asked. Hades, already half reclined, waved her off. If it's Zeus whining again, just toss it into the river. Styx frowned. Don't pollute my river, please. Hera cleared her throat theatrically. To Hades, king of the underworld, she began, you are hereby invited to attend the upcoming trial of the traitor and thief, Prometheus. The proceedings shall commence on Olympus in 3 days' time. Your presence is both requested and expected. Signed, Zeus. Hades sat up straighter, blinking. Prometheus? Already caught. I guess the old Titan didn't run fast enough, Hecate muttered. Or maybe he didn't run at all. So the flame was given to the mortals already? Hades murmured. Minth looked at him. Lord Hades, do you think the humans will be okay? It was only thanks to Lord Prometheus that they can still survive. They'll struggle, he said, standing slowly. But they'll rise. That's what they do. Hera wasn't so sure about that. The number of humans dying didn't decrease. In fact, there seems to be more death than in the past. Hecate tilted her head. So, are you going? Hades nodded once. Yes. I also have questions for Prometheus. Things only he can answer. My lord, the underworld can't do without you for long. Styx stated, her voice like cold metal. Hades paused and nodded. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I should just send Hera? After all, she's still part of the council. Demeter laughed. Come now, Hades. You've built an empire down here. Surely it can survive a few days without your brooding presence. Maybe, he said. But let's be honest, it won't be as dramatic. They all chuckled again, the warmth of their rare gathering making the underworld feel, for just a moment, like a place of life rather than death. Within the cold and cavernous halls beneath Olympus, where divine judgment was sealed behind layers of immortal stone, Prometheus sat quietly behind adamantine bars. The chains that bound him were forged by the Cyclops themselves, wrought from celestial metals that no titan, god, or spirit could break. His body bore the wear of punishment. His frame was gaunt, his skin pale from the lack of sunlight, and his once brilliant amber eyes dulled with fatigue. Yet, even in such a state, a cheeky, irrepressible smile still danced on his lips. He had no regrets. With his arms resting lazily over his knees, he hummed a forgotten tune, the kind sung before gods and titans ever warred. It echoed off the stone walls like a lullaby for a dying world. Then, without sound, a presence appeared just outside his cell. Prometheus stopped humming and looked up. His smile widened, genuinely surprised and amused. Well, he said. Look who the winds of Olympus dragged in. My dear brother, come to shed a tear or throw a rock. Epimetheus stood silently, his fists clenched at his sides. He looked stronger than Prometheus remembered, his hair pulled back, his shoulders squared with fury and sorrow. His eyes burned not with divine wrath but with human emotion, betrayal, confusion, and helplessness. I had to see it for myself, Epimetheus said through gritted teeth. I had to see how far they would go. Prometheus tilted his head, letting his chains clink. Surprisingly, not too far, for now. After all, I did steal something precious. Why did you do it? His brother growled. You knew what would happen. You knew the punishment. So why? I did, Prometheus said with a soft chuckle. And honestly, I expected the chains to be heavier. Epimetheus glared at him. This isn't a joke. No, Prometheus admitted. It's not. For a moment, the air between them thickened with silence. I don't understand, Epimetheus said, his voice cracking. You, the smartest of us, the one who planned the traps and war machines that brought Cronus' army to their knees, you gave away Olympus' most precious flame to a bunch of hairless apes barely able to walk upright. Why? Prometheus looked at him kindly, like a parent to a child still struggling to see the world beyond the horizon. Come on, brother. Prometheus chuckled. I think you should already know the reason. He doesn't. He's dumb and slow. That's why he always followed Prometheus, because he's smart and quick-witted. He can't understand why his brother did that. Not to mention those ungrateful bastards. And those damn Olympians. Have they forgotten what you did? If you didn't risk your life hiding the remnants of their army, would they have enough force to beat the Titans? Don't hate Olympus for this, brother, he said gently. They only did what they believed necessary to protect their reign. What I did was treason. I know that. I accept it. But why? Epimetheus repeated, almost pleading now. Prometheus leaned back, letting the cold stone support his weight as he finally answered. Because they needed it. Humanity needed a spark. Not just to cook their meat or light their caves, but to believe. To hope. Epimetheus frowned. Hope? They're nothing but beasts. I've seen them. They kill for sport, destroy what they don't understand, and fight over meaningless things. They're worse than some of the monsters the Titans created. Prometheus closed his eyes and nodded. Yes. They lie, they steal, and they betray. They destroy their own kind, their own homes. They burn what they can't control and curse what they don't understand. He paused, then opened his eyes slowly. But they also dream, Epimetheus. They create songs with no audience. They paint visions of the world they wish existed. They hold each other through the dark. They fall in love. They look up at the stars and wonder what lies beyond. They risk their lives for people they've never met. They build, and laugh, and cry, and change. His smile returned, soft and reverent. They are chaos, yes. But they are also a possibility. That is the most dangerous and beautiful thing in the universe. Epimetheus said nothing. He stared at his brother, trying to find fault in his words, some flaw in the conviction that held the Titan's broken body upright. But there was none. You love them, Epimetheus whispered, as though only just realizing it. I do, Prometheus said. Not as gods love their subjects, but as a father loves a child who hasn't yet learned how to walk straight. They stumble. They fall. But one day, they'll rise. The silence lingered again. Only this time, it felt different. Not cold. Not hostile. Will you do something for me, brother? Prometheus asked suddenly, leaning forward. Epimetheus met his gaze. Anything. Look after them. The humans. They'll need guidance and protection. Someone who won't try to turn them into slaves or toys or soldiers. Epimetheus blinked. You want me to guide them? You don't need to guide them, Prometheus said. Just be there. Watch. Nudge. And when the time comes, help them remember what they're capable of. Epimetheus hesitated, then nodded. I will, he said firmly. I don't understand it all. But I'll do it. For you. Prometheus closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. For the first time since he'd been imprisoned, his shoulders relaxed. Thank you, he whispered. They stayed like that for a while, two brothers, separated by fate, ideology, and the bars of divine justice. And though the storm of Olympus would soon descend upon Prometheus, and the chains would bite deeper, and the eagle would come to feast upon his liver for countless centuries, he was at peace. For the flame had been given, and a spark had been born. Olympus stood still. The sky above the mountain, normally vibrant with clouds, sunlight, and immortal radiance, had dimmed to a solemn hush. The great marble amphitheater, a monument of divine splendor, was filled with nearly every god and goddess that resided in the overworld. They sat in rows of floating thrones and seats formed of clouds, vines, crystal, or gold, each reflecting the personality and domain of the gods they belonged to. It was a rare occasion for Olympus, not a feast nor a war council, but a trial. Prometheus, the fire thief, the rebel, the titan who once sided with the Olympians to overthrow his own kin, had been captured. And today, judgment would be rendered. But before the trial could begin, all gods waited, some with tension, others with irritation, for the arrival of one being. Perhaps the most important figure in this gathering. And no, it wasn't Zeus nor Poseidon, but the god who awaits at the end. The god whom the primordial Uranus acknowledged to stand beyond the heavens. King of the underworld, god of the dead. Hades. Suddenly, a thick purple mist spread across the amphitheater, rolling over the divine thrones like a storm made of dreams and shadows. The younger gods, those born after the Titanomachi, gasped in confusion and fear. A few stood up, gripping their weapons instinctively. A chill ran down their spines as the mist coiled and crackled with power ancient and boundless. Then it dissipated with a soundless exhale. Hades had arrived. Clad in robes darker than midnight, embroidered with threads that shimmered like starlight glimpsed through a cave, he stood tall. His divine presence bore the weight of uncountable souls. His eyes, deep and cold as the Styx, swept over the assembled immortals. The gods fell silent. Even those who had once marched with him during the war, those who now ruled the skies and lands and oceans, straightened uncomfortably. Because they remembered. They remembered the horrors of the war, the fury of titans, and the merciless silence with which Hades erased his enemies. He was not one to bark orders or roar for blood. He simply acted. And when he did, it was final. Many of the gods now basking in luxuries and vanity could not forget the truth, that in power, Hades was someone that stood beyond anyone else in this gathering. They had changed over the decades. Some had become complacent, arrogant, drunk on authority. They became worse than the titans whom they rebelled against and overthrew. That's why when Hades' eyes swept through them, they couldn't help but lower their heads in shame and guilt. Although some still feel quite close to the god of the underworld. At this moment, a soft but confident voice interrupted the reverent stillness and silent guilt. "Greetings, Lord Hades, Lord of Spirits," said a woman with grace and poise. Themis, the beautiful Titan goddess of justice, dressed in plain white robes, with eyes covered in a blindfold. After the war, she chose to refrain from interfering with the politics of Olympus. Instead, she chose to build her own temple and judge the mortal world. Hades inclined his head. "Themis," he greeted, simply. She smiled softly and moved back to her place near the witness platform. Hades scanned the space, finding a good spot to take a seat, then raised a hand. Instantly, black crystal sprouted from the marble floor, shaping itself into an obsidian throne, a dark mirror of Olympus' gaudy gold. He sat, draping one leg over the other, resting a hand beneath his chin as he watched the proceedings with unreadable calm. Poseidon, seated nearby on a throne of coral and crashing waves, nodded to his brother. "Brother," he said with a voice like a tide retreating. Hades returned the nod, wordlessly. Zeus, however, was fuming. The king of gods, robed in white and gold, sat at the center of it all. His eyes crackled with divine lightning, and his jaw was tight with irritation. The moment Hades arrived, the room had shifted. Whispers filled the air. The younger gods, who had once stood in awe of him, were now curiously peering at the figure in black. He could hear them. "Who is he? Is that the god of the dead? He doesn't look like a corpse at all." "Why would you think he'd look like a corpse?" "Because, I don't know, he's the freaking god of the dead." And worst of all, Hades completely ignored his majesty and didn't even greet him. He is the king of gods. Yet Hades simply stared at him and didn't bother offering any greetings. The disrespect. However, no matter how angry he is, he didn't dare scold or reprimand Hades. His power is enough for Zeus to completely lower his head and swallow his pride. Finally, with a wave of his hand and a burst of thunder, Zeus stood. "Let it be known," he declared, his voice echoing across the chamber, "that this assembly has been gathered to bear witness to the trial of the traitor, the fire thief, Prometheus." The amphitheater fell silent. Chains rattled. From a separate archway guarded by divine spirits, Prometheus was brought forth, shackled in glowing celestial chains. Though his body was thin, and wounds marred his skin, He walked upright, shoulders back, chin lifted, and that damnable smirk still dancing on his lips. He was placed in the center of the amphitheater. Zeus stared down at him with storm-filled eyes. "Do you admit your crime?" Zeus asked. Prometheus looked up at him, his eyes calm as he stared straight at Zeus' burning gaze. "If you mean giving your precious flame to humans," he said with a chuckle, "then yes. Happily." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Zeus clenched his throne's arms. "You dare mock us even now?" "I mock no one, king of gods," Prometheus said, gaze flickering over the gods who had once stood beside him during the war. "I only remind you what it means to give hope." Zeus slammed his foot to the floor. Thunder boomed, startling the gods who were witnessing the trial. Well, except for those whose power is at the same level as or exceeds that of Zeus. Hades leaned forward slightly, completely unaffected by Zeus' performance. "Hope, ha," he echoed quietly, his voice calm. Prometheus turned to him, his expression softening. "Yes. I believe that a day will come when humanity will shine brighter than any gods." Insolence. Zeus roared, and the sky darkened as thunder exploded in fury. Other gods also flared up their divine power, their eyes burning in anger at Prometheus. "How dare you compare us to mere mortals? Have you been blinded?" Hades, intrigued, raised a hand. This immediately silenced the anger of the gods, who all quickly retracted their aura, bringing the place into calmness and solemnity once more. "Why, Prometheus? Why risk your immortality, your status, your freedom, for humans?" Prometheus met his gaze. "Ha, many have asked this question before." Hades leaned forward slightly. "They all want reasons. Why would I go so far to steal the flames from the gods and give them to humanity? Hatred towards the gods? Wanting to rebel? I feel none of that. There is no reason why." He grinned. "Does a man need any reason to protect his children?" Another ripple of silence. Hades leaned back, resting his cheek on his knuckles once more. "You are a fool," he said, as Prometheus merely chuckled. "But I admire fools like you." He waved his hands to Zeus. "You can sentence him now. I have more questions to ask, but it seems like you couldn't wait any longer." Zeus' eye twitched, but he nodded stiffly. "For the crime of stealing the sacred flame, your sentence is thus," he announced, rising. "Prometheus shall be bound to the peak of the Caucasus Mountains. There, every day, an eagle shall feast upon his liver. And every night, it shall regrow. Eternal suffering, for eternal defiance." Prometheus didn't flinch. "Sounds messy," he said with a tired grin. Zeus gestured. "Let it be done." As divine spirits prepared to drag Prometheus away, he turned his head slightly toward the crowd, or rather, to Hades. "Look after them," he said, barely a whisper. And those who had heard him knew he was speaking of humanity. Then, with the chains glowing, he was pulled from Olympus. And Hades sat silently, eyes half-lidded, appearing to be in deep thought. Just now, he felt his heartbeat quicken, as if something tugged his heartstrings and called out to him. It was similar to what he felt with Nyx, but more intimate. What was that? He wondered. Somewhere, far from the shores of any known land, the sea slumbered beneath the golden glow of dawn. The wind was gentle, the waves soft, and for a brief moment, all the world seemed to hold its breath. Amidst the calm blue waves, a patch of white foam drifted silently. It swirled in strange patterns, elegant, almost purposeful, yet no god nor mortal had laid eyes upon it. But the sea knew. The sky, too, remembered. And both trembled in anticipation. Then, with a blinding shimmer of light, the foam pulsed. From it, a figure emerged. A radiant woman stood on the surface of the water as though it were stone. Her golden hair cascaded down her back, shimmering like sunlight striking a still ocean. Her eyes gleamed with molten gold, ancient yet newborn. Her skin, kissed by starlight, was the perfect harmony of beauty and divinity. Every curve of her body was a melody sculpted to enchant. She was a being of desire, of allure, of ineffable elegance. And she was naked, without shame. The sea itself swirled around her, offering waves to cradle her, but none dared touch her without her will. She blinked slowly. She felt the sun's warmth, and recognized it. She felt the ocean's embrace, and welcomed it. She breathed in the wind, and smiled. I finally exist, she whispered, her voice like silk and honey. Though her lips had never spoken a word before, she knew the language. Though her eyes had never seen the world, she knew its names. Her mind overflowed with ancient truths, born not of experience, but of divine instinct. She touched her heart, and a pulse of warmth responded. A soft hum called from within, not in words but in will. A direction. A purpose. A place. Mount Olympus. That name glimmered in her mind like a beacon. She did not know why, but she knew she had to go there. It was as if part of her had always belonged there, waiting to be reunited. She looked up at the heavens and closed her eyes. She could feel her authority, a divine domain, though it had not yet fully awakened. It yearned. Not for conquest or dominion, but for something more elusive. Connection. Love. Desire. Balance. From the sea she was born, but it was not her domain. From the sky she was formed, but it was not her father. She was a child of chaos, born of a fragment of Uranus, of the severed sky, and nourished by the sea's womb. A primordial miracle. Aphrodite. She had not heard the name spoken, but it lingered in her thoughts like a forgotten lullaby. It was hers. I am Aphrodite, she said, testing the shape of the words. Goddess of. She paused. The answer was not yet clear, but it would come. With newfound resolve, she turned her gaze toward the distant peaks of Olympus. She lifted a hand, and the winds bent to her will. The sea gently released her as she rose from its surface. A current of air wrapped around her like invisible silk, lifting her higher and higher into the sky. She flew, no, floated, with the grace of a falling petal in reverse. Birds scattered in surprise. Clouds parted before her beauty. The world itself seemed to hush in reverence. As she soared through the sky, an unseen ripple spread from her presence, an unseen song that tugged at the hearts of men and gods alike. Beneath the skies of Olympus, the divine hall thundered with merriment. Goblets of ambrosia clinked, music enchanted the air, and laughter echoed like celestial thunder. The Olympians were in high spirits, celebrating the punishment of the so-called traitor, Prometheus. In fact, they never really cared about the flame, especially Zeus, as the flame was useless to him anyway. However, he hated the fact that someone dared to steal from him, ignoring his majesty. So punishment must be served. After that, they went back to their daily parties. But one god was absent. Far away, on the peak of a grand and tall mountain, where not even gods would dare to casually climb, Hades stood beside the chained titan of foresight. Prometheus was bound to a jagged monolith, thick adamantine chains wrapping around his limbs, gleaming with divine power. His body was weakened, his divine form dulled and gaunt from the draining sentence. Yet his smile had not faded. Most would scream, Hades remarked, settling onto a stone, which softened into a black velvet chair the moment he sat. You smile. I've always found suffering makes for a dull companion, Prometheus said, his voice rasped but warm. A smile helps ease the weight. Hades studied him in silence. You knew this would happen. You saw the future. And yet you gave them the flame. Prometheus nodded. They needed it more than we did. You could have changed things. Said Hades. You cannot change things. Prometheus observed him, eyes going up and down. Not everyone is like you, who broke out of the cycle and grew conscious. Hades frowned. What does that even mean? It means what it means. Prometheus smirked. For a moment, only the sound of the wind brushing the rocks was heard. Then Hades leaned forward slightly, his voice quieter now. Forget that. Prometheus. Tell me, in all your scrying of the future, have you ever seen it? Chaos. The Titan's smile faded a little, replaced by a stillness. I have, Prometheus said. Not often. Not clearly. But I've seen enough. A plane that exists infinitely beyond this dimension. Hades nodded. Then, have you seen those that live there? I remember when I was young, Prometheus mused, a whisper came to me in a dream. It didn't speak in words. It was a language beyond meaning. It showed me glimpses. Things that existed before form. Things that should never have names. Hades' gaze sharpened. So you did. Huh. So, what do you think about them? Prometheus looked at him. What do I think? I think we should just worry about our own affairs. Those creatures are beyond even you. True, I have never felt so small and insignificant when I saw them, Hades admitted. However, I don't want to be completely helpless if they decided to just destroy us for fun. Prometheus frowned. I see. That's why, give me more information. I'm sure you knew more than you let on. Prometheus closed his eyes. Chaos isn't a thing, Hades. It's what comes before thought. And those that dwell in it, they aren't gods. They're not even beings. They're rules that don't want to be broken. And every time humanity advances, every time they step outside their mortal cage, they scrape against those rules. Hades leaned back, his expression unreadable. Humanity? Why them specifically? Not us? How are they somehow related to chaos? I don't know, Prometheus sighed. I cannot see what lies beyond the Trojan War. It's all black, as if everything ceased to exist after that. He stared at Hades. However, I do know that those creatures took notice of this world due to humans. Hades frowned. This conversation seems to have made him more confused than before. Wait, every time humanity advances, they scrape those rules? Could it be that the reason why those creatures even found this place is because humanity is advancing? However, he couldn't understand why humans specifically. What was so special about them? Meanwhile, in Olympus, the laughter died. The music stopped. A golden mist filled the hall like dawn piercing through fog, casting the shadows into sharp retreat. The gods turned, eyes wide, mouths parting in stunned disbelief. From the mist stepped a woman. No, something more. Her golden hair danced like sunlit silk, her skin shimmered like fresh dew on marble, and her eyes, those eyes were ancient, ageless, and yet innocent as new spring. She wore nothing but strands of seafoam that somehow wrapped her modesty, teasing the imagination of even the most disciplined gods. Aphrodite had arrived. Every god stared, transfixed. Dionysus dropped his goblet. Hermes blinked rapidly. Poseidon's jaw slackened. Even stoic Themis tilted her head in curiosity, analyzing the newcomer with cool calculation. Zeus rose from his throne, his grin growing. "Welcome, O Radiant One," he said in his most charming voice, straightening his robes. "I am Zeus, King of the Gods. Might I ask your name, or shall I simply call you the Goddess of Beauty?" The golden-haired woman gave him a knowing smile, one that could start wars and end empires. "Aphrodite," she answered simply. And yes, the Goddess of Beauty sounds just right. As those words left her lips, the great hall of Olympus had become a battleground of charm and desperation. Gods scrambled like starved wolves in a banquet of beauty, each trying to win the favor of the newly arrived goddess, Aphrodite. "Come with me, and I will gift you a garden that rivals Elysium," crooned Poseidon, strumming a melody laced with enchantment. "I can make you the queen of commerce, of travel, of messages between hearts," Hermes whispered, his eyes glittering with mischief. "I will build you temples in every city," Zeus growled at his fellow gods before turning towards Aphrodite. "You will have worshippers who bleed your name into the soil." One after another, gods and divine spirits offered her wealth, power, dominion, and dreams sculpted from celestial gold. Some knelt before her. Others tried to impress her with divine displays, lightning, music, and even illusions of future empires. Aphrodite merely smiled. Not coldly, not cruelly, but distantly, as if she were not fully present, her body basking in the adoration, but her mind elsewhere. Her golden eyes scanned the divine throng with quiet purpose, ignoring the bickering gods. When a hand reached for her, whether it was to touch her hair or hold her arm, she moved like wind-blown mist, elegant and untouchable. Her presence was intoxicating, but her essence slipped through their fingers like a dream half-remembered. The gods began to argue among themselves. Some were subtle, casting illusions and charms to appear more desirable. Others shouted threats, old rivalries reignited in their desperation to possess her. Tension sparked. A fight brewed. Zeus's patience thinned. The king of gods, seated upon his grand throne of storm clouds and authority, clenched his jaw. Every time he spoke, Aphrodite nodded with polite amusement but gave him no answer. Every time he approached, she moved away, gracefully evading his presence. For a god who demanded obedience, who ruled Olympus with thunder and pride, this was an insult he could scarcely bear. At this moment, the doors opened, and everything fell silent. The air grew heavy, and a quiet chill brushed past the revelers. Purple mist poured into the hall, seeping like ancient memory, and from that mist stepped Hades. His cloak billowed like the folds of night. His crown of obsidian shimmered with shadows. His presence quickly gave the feeling of terror and worship. The younger gods fell into quiet awe, shuffling aside as the god of the dead returned from his visit to Prometheus. Hades walked slowly, his divine pressure rolling across the hall like a tide. He didn't need to command silence. His presence brings silence and solemnity, a reminder of inevitable endings. But Hades paused. Just for a second. His steps faltered, and his eyes narrowed. He felt it. A ripple. A tremble in his divinity, as if a thread had been plucked from his very soul. Something ancient. Something familiar, and yet completely unknown. Across the room, Aphrodite turned. Their eyes met. The gods faded away. Not literally, but in meaning. In presence. Her gaze held his with such intensity that even Hades, who had stood before Titans, who had become the Lord of the Dead itself, felt a weight in his chest. She saw him. Not just the body. Not the title. Not the god. Not the soul. Him. And she knew. This was the one. This was who her authority had whispered about before she even opened her eyes. The one who existed beyond beauty, beyond desire. The stillness that tempered the flame. The shade beneath the bloom. Aphrodite took a step forward. Hades didn't move. Zeus noticed. His hand tightened on his throne. The gods held their breath. In a voice like a breeze through golden reeds, Aphrodite spoke, directed to no one but Hades. There you are. It wasn't a greeting. It was a realization. And the fates, unseen in the corners of the world, quietly turned the next page of destiny. A page stained with love and longing, with war and tragedy, with defiance and divinity. The goddess of beauty had found her anchor. Ancient Greece would never be the same. In the dimly lit halls of the Underworld's core section, the divine city of Nox pulsed with muted activity. Soul after soul moved like wisps under the ever-glowing lanterns of judgment. Temples for the great dead loomed in the distance, and the divine towers of the gods glimmered with ethereal majesty. But not all was peaceful. Another petition? Hera groaned, lifting a golden scroll from a table already stacked too high. Her elegant brows twitched in annoyance. This one is from a greater god complaining that the judging system is biased because he cannot be with his mortal lover. That's the fourth today. Hecate sighed beside her, her midnight cloak rippling even without wind. She held a silver scepter that pulsed faintly with magic, indicating a new request. Again. What in Tartarus does Hades deal with daily? Hera muttered, setting the scroll down and massaging her temples. No wonder he looks like he's aged 5 eons in the last decade. Not really, he looks more beautiful than ever, Hecate corrected with a smile. But yes, his work is stressful. Their workspace was a massive chamber filled with magical devices floating in the air, each representing different domains, biomes, souls, and divine territories. There are also projections showing souls lined up in ethereal queues, overseen by divine spirits with clipboards and tired expressions. Divine spirits fluttered in and out, dumping scrolls of petitions, territorial disputes, biome expansion requests, worship management, and afterlife infrastructure planning. He needs another 1,000 divine secretaries, Hera muttered. This is madness. I think 1,000 wouldn't even be enough, Hecate mused, sarcastically. I should have brought more wine. The self-proclaimed queen of the underworld and the goddess of magic were many things, powerful, cunning, and wise. But today, they were glorified managers in an afterlife metropolis run by one overworked god, who is currently on leave. I swear, if one more minor god complains about the temperature of the lava pools in the torment section, Hera began. But then she stopped. Her golden eyes narrowed. Something shifted. Something subtle, but wrong. She looked up from the scrolls, her posture tensing. Her divine senses, ever sharp, extended out across the underworld up to the overworld. Hecate noticed immediately. What is it? I felt a ripple, Hera murmured. A presence entered my territory. Hecate raised an eyebrow. Enemy. I guess, yeah. Hera said, though her frown deepened. Feminine. Immensely powerful. But not part of our domain. An Olympian. Hecate's voice dipped cold. What goddess would dare trespass into the underworld without permission? Hera stood from her obsidian throne, golden threads tightening around her wrists like gauntlets. Who said it's an intruder of the underworld? She questioned. Hecate blinked. Then what are you talking about? Hera turned, fire in her gaze. I mean, some freshborn goddess is trying to lay her lecherous hands on my dear brother? Hecate blinked, then chuckled. You're really starting to sound like a wife. I am his sister, queen of the underworld, Hera retorted, adjusting her divine robes. And someone must protect him from opportunistic divine harlots. And here I thought you didn't care. Hera crossed her arms, golden aura blooming behind her. He's one of the few gods who's remained noble through the centuries. I do care. Hecate smirked. Should I bring the scythe or the curses? Neither, Hera said, walking past her. We're simply going to observe. And if we find some golden-haired seductress trying to wiggle her way into Hades' shadow, we'll have a conversation. No one is touching Herman. I'll get the wine, Hecate said, smiling wickedly as she followed. And thus, the goddesses of marriage and magic marched toward the divine courtyard, scrolls forgotten, petitions left unread, as a new ripple echoed across the underworld stillness. The queen of the underworld had sensed competition, and she would make sure no one touched what wasn't theirs. Hades' garden was silent, save for the gentle rustling of leaves, real leaves. A scent, sharp and refreshing, danced lightly through the stale air, contrasting against the heavy scent of ash and still souls. Demeter stood in the middle of Hades' private garden, sweat glistening on her brow. Her once pristine robes were muddied with black underworld soil, and her fingers were stained with traces of mana-infused dirt. She frowned deeply, glaring at the dry patch of ground in front of her. Her magic pulsed, and from it, a small stalk sprouted, and died moments later. Ugh! She groaned, flinging her hands up and falling backwards onto the dark grass. Why is this place so difficult? Not far from her, Minth knelt by a neat row of glistening green stalks, mint plants, healthy and thriving, their leaves dancing under an artificial breeze crafted by enchanted glyphs. She tilted her head and smiled softly as she watched Demeter writhe in frustration. You're using too much divine energy, Minth said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The ground here doesn't respond to overwhelming force. It's like trying to raise a child by yelling at them. Demeter groaned again. I've literally made jungles rise from stone. I cultivated floating fields in the skies. I am the goddess of the harvest. And yet here I am, being humbled by this garden of death. Minth stood up and walked over, crouching beside her. Technically, it's a garden of life now. Demeter turned her head, resting her cheek on the cool soil. She stared at one of the mint plants nearby. The soft green shimmer, the scent that reminded her of summer breezes and meadows, it didn't belong here, and yet, it flourished. A paradox in leaf form. How? She whispered. Minth tilted her head. How what? Demeter stared at the plant. How did this happen? How did you do it? Even I couldn't make a single blade of grass grow down here for years. And you made this entire row of mint. Minth sat down beside her, picking a leaf and rubbing it between her fingers. I used the notes you left behind. From when you visited. And I experimented for decades. I failed more times than I could count. But I just kept trying. Demeter blinked, surprised. You used my notes? Minth chuckled. Of course. You're the expert, after all. I just listened to the underworld. It has its own rhythm, you know. It's not dead, the underworld is alive, and just like Lord Hades, it prefers silence. So I learned how to whisper instead of shouting. Demeter was quiet for a moment. Then, finally, she sighed in defeat. Would you mind helping me? Minth's eyes widened. You want my help? Demeter groaned again. Don't make me say it twice. Minth beamed and, without another word, Help the goddess up from the soil. All right. First rule, no raw divine force. Think subtle. Like cradling an ember instead of blasting a torch. Demeter dusted herself off. You're enjoying this far too much. I am, Minth admitted with a grin. Now, come. Let's plan something together. Maybe not mint, we already have too much of that. How about Underworld poppies? Demeter blinked. There's such a thing. There is now, Minth said playfully. They glow at night. As the two goddesses knelt side by side, their fingers combing the soil and coaxing life from the depths of death, something rare bloomed between them, respect. Even in the land of the dead, growth was still possible. At the end of space, where the stars had long since dimmed and reality began to fray into formless threads, there drifted a shadow cloaked in silence and mystery. She was Nyx, the primordial of night, older than light, deeper than silence, eternal and unknowable. She moved without motion, a silhouette against the void, wandering through the hollow seams where existence began to crumble. Eons passed with each step, or perhaps no time at all. Here, at the edge of all things, time was a suggestion rather than a law. Then, finally, a whisper echoed through the abyss, deep and reverberating, as if the fabric of reality itself were speaking. Why have you come, Nyx? Nyx halted. Her form, vast and cosmic, folded in upon itself until she appeared as a tall woman shrouded in endless night, her eyes two glowing crescents of silver. She crossed her arms, her voice smooth but firm. I have questions, Kronos. The voice responded with a weary hum. I cannot answer them. Nyx's brow twitched. Few ever dared to deny her. Fewer still survived it. But she wasn't here to wage war. She was here for clarity. She looked beyond the folds of time, seeing glimpses of what had passed, what shouldn't have passed. I'll break this dimension if you refuse to answer. How unreasonable. Very well. Now, why did it happen earlier? She asked, her voice lowering like the hush before a storm. Why now? There was silence. Not emptiness, but a silence pregnant with meaning. The silence of hesitation. Of guilt. Then, a whisper, a ripple through reality. Because I willed it so. Nyx narrowed her eyes. This cycle is dying, Nyx, the voice of Kronos continued, low, ethereal, barely distinguishable from the dimension itself. The threads are weakening. This will be the final chance. I cannot undo our mistakes anymore. Nyx's fingers twitched. So you accelerated the process, she murmured. You let them discover this universe early. Yes, came the reply, simple and unapologetic. Nyx frowned deeply, the starry aura around her dimming like a dusk eclipsed by cloud. You risk everything, Kronos. I know. But now, please leave, Kronos said softly. Before your shadow unravels the root of time itself. Even now, this place, this sacred veil, is tearing apart just from Nyx's presence. Nyx stood silent for a moment longer, her eyes shimmering with ancient light. She wanted to ask more. She wanted to defy him. But even she, night itself, knew not to tamper too long here. She gave a final nod. Then I will go. But remember, Kronos, if this fails, your burden will be heavier than any others. The voice whispered no reply. And with that, Nyx turned. Her shadow collapsed in upon itself and vanished, like a dream recalled too late. Behind her, the space where she stood twisted briefly, then stitched itself shut like a wound. And once more, only Kronos, the primordial of time, remained in that unformed place, waiting, watching, silently praying this would be enough. The golden halls of Olympus rang with laughter, music, and the clinking of goblets as the gods celebrated the sentence of the traitor, Prometheus. Wine flowed like rivers, ambrosia piled high in silver bowls, and the sweet scent of nectar perfumed the air. At the long divine table, Hades sat quietly, picking at his food. Unlike the other gods, his presence did not boast arrogance or flamboyance. Rather, it radiated a quiet, undeniable power. His expression was stoic, indifferent to the roaring festivities around him. That is, until she started to get inside his personal space. Aphrodite. Golden-haired, with eyes like melting honey and skin that shimmered like the first blush of dawn, the newly born goddess floated beside Hades, her presence instantly capturing the attention of every god in the hall. Yet she had eyes for only one. "Lord Hades, am I correct?" she said sweetly, hovering beside his chair with a radiant smile. "May I ask, what is your favorite food?" Hades didn't even glance up from his plate as he replied coolly, "Anything that tastes good." Aphrodite blinked, momentarily surprised at the simplicity, then giggled. "All right then. What about your favorite color?" "Purple." "Purple is power, nobility, grace." He had always liked that color, even as a human in his past life. So his answer came without hesitation, and Aphrodite twirled her golden hair around her finger thoughtfully. Do you like long hair or short hair?" Hades finally looked at her, just briefly, his dark eyes locking with hers for a second that felt like an eternity. "Long hair. It brings out one's elegance better." Aphrodite leaned forward, her smile becoming more mischievous. "Do you prefer younger girls, or mature women?" The hall grew slightly quieter. A few gods subtly turned their heads to listen. A few not so subtly leaned in. After all, quite a majority of gods prefer younger and minor lovers. Hades chewed a piece of meat slowly, swallowed, and answered evenly, "Mature women. They understand when to talk and when to keep their mouth shut." His eyes wandered to Aphrodite, implying that he wants her to shut up. Aphrodite laughed again, full and musical, like a song rippling over a still lake. "You're so fun to talk to, Lord Hades." "I wasn't trying to be," he said plainly, sipping his goblet. But that didn't discourage her in the slightest. She continued, questions upon questions. His favorite season, which Hades answered to be winter. Favorite flower, to which Hades replied, wisteria. Thoughts on love, with Hades answering he hasn't thought about it yet. His opinion on mortals, with Hades answering that he finds them intriguing and full of potential but is annoyed by their stupidity. If he found her beautiful, which he did. If he thought she talked too much, and whatnot. Hades answered each question like he was swatting a fly, calm, unbothered, honest. He even admitted, "Yes, you talk too much," which made Aphrodite laugh even harder and settling closer beside him. Across the hall, the Olympians seethed. A god narrowed his eyes, pausing mid-drink. Another leaned on the table, pouting dramatically. Poseidon crushed a grape with his fingers, imagining it was Hades' face. Even Zeus fumed quietly, a thundercloud forming behind his eyes as he watched the goddess of beauty orbiting around his older brother like a lovesick moron. "He's not even trying," Themis whispered, clearly amused. "He doesn't need to. Many would throw themselves at him if he asked." A goddess replied, sipping her wine, eyes in a heart shape as she stared at Hades. "Why is he following him around like a lost puppy?" Poseidon muttered. No one had the answer. But Aphrodite didn't care. She circled Hades like a comet, her smile unshaken, her eyes shining. And Hades, unbothered and ever composed, simply kept eating, perhaps the only god on Olympus who could enjoy a meal while being interrogated by desire incarnate. Only the smallest of smirks tugged at the corner of his lips when no one was watching. Except Aphrodite. She saw it, and she knew. She was getting closer. Then, as the golden plates were cleared and the last goblet of ambrosia drained, Hades rose quietly from his seat. "I'll be taking my leave," he declared, his deep voice echoing through the celebratory hall. No one responded. Not immediately. But the silence was not one of respect, it was relief cloaked in reverence. Behind the still faces and polite nods, a wave of hidden smiles spread like wildfire. Finally, the oppressive weight in the air seemed to lift. The fear, the unease that lingered when the Lord of the Underworld was in their presence, all of it faded. Wine tasted sweeter. The fire burned warmer. Music returned with a livelier rhythm. Now they could really enjoy the party. Already, gods and spirits alike were shifting in their seats, angling themselves toward Aphrodite, each of them eager to claim her attention now that the shadow of Hades was leaving the hall. But their hopes were shattered with a single sentence. "I'll follow you," Aphrodite said sweetly, rising from her seat and floating gracefully behind him. The party froze again. Every god's turned toward her in disbelief. Hades paused mid-step and glanced back. "You're serious?" Aphrodite nodded, smiling as golden strands of her hair shimmered in the torchlight. "I'm going to the underworld with you." Hades blinked. The underworld isn't beautiful. It's filled with endless night, iron skies, and rivers of the dead. The air tastes like ashes and the smell reeks of the dead. I don't mind, she said. Hades frowned. It's loud where it shouldn't be and quiet where it should scream. You'll hear mourning songs echo from caves and see wandering souls who've forgotten their own names. Nothing grows without struggle. Everything is a torment and pain. I don't mind, she repeated, still smiling. He stared at her. We're terribly overworked. Reincarnation petitions, judgment hearings, territorial disputes between shades, minor spirits demanding recognition, and the occasional cursed hero trying to fight their way out. There's no rest. And certainly no parties like this. I still don't mind. Minth keeps accidentally planting mint in sacred places. Sharon is always complaining about bridge tolls. And many complain that they are being paid less than the amount of work that they do. Aphrodite chuckled, unfazed. I can help with that. Hades narrowed his eyes. You know, if a goddess of beauty starts living in the underworld, mortals might start thinking death is beautiful. They'll throw away their lives to find you. Aphrodite tilted her head, golden eyes gleaming. Then we'll deal with that after I settle in. He stared at her for a long, quiet moment. The gods behind them held their breath. Zeus clenched his goblet until the gold dented. A god muttered curses. Poseidon had already given up. Themis simply watched, intrigued. And finally, Hades sighed. Very well, he said. Aphrodite's smile widened like the dawn. As Hades turned and exited the hall, the goddess of beauty followed with light steps, her glow trailing behind him like a second moon descending into the abyss. And for the first time in divine memory, Olympus truly fell silent. The dark gates of the underworld creaked open with a groan like thunder rumbling through bone. Shadows parted before their master, revealing the obsidian steps that led down into the city of the dead. Hades stepped through first, his aura dimming to match the gloom of his kingdom. Behind him, Aphrodite followed with an elegance that seemed wholly alien to the realm, her feet never quite touching the ground, and every step leaving a faint golden glow before being swallowed by the earth. The spirits of the dead paused in their wandering. Even Cerberus blinked all three of his eyes in confused curiosity. But before either of them could take another step into the heart of the realm, two goddesses appeared before them. A golden shimmer to the left and a swirl of purple mist to the right. Hera and Hecate. Hera stood with arms crossed, eyes narrowed. I expected you to attend a council meeting, she said sharply, voice clipped like a blade of law. Not pick up girls like some mortal prince in heat. Behind Hades, Aphrodite gave a sweet wave. Greetings, Lady Hera. Lord Hades speaks highly of you. Hera froze. But she soon recovered and glared at her like she might smite her on the spot. Hades exhaled, rubbing his temples. She didn't exactly give me a choice. She's incredibly persistent. And loud. I'm persuasive, Aphrodite corrected with a wink. Hera eyed her for a long, silent moment, long enough that Hades instinctively took a step back, half expecting thunderbolts or curses. But instead, Hera grabbed Aphrodite by the wrist. You. With me, she ordered. Before anyone could object, the two vanished in a flicker of golden light. Hecate chuckled softly and gave Hades a sympathetic smile. Welcome home, she said warmly, her voice as calm as midnight wind. Then she too vanished, her purple mist dissolving into the air. And Hades was left standing alone in his own realm, blinking dumbly at the empty space before him. He slowly looked around, shoulders slumping. I was gone for an hour. Cerberus whined. A group of souls began arguing over their place in line for judgment. The dead started muttering rumors already. The underworld had changed. A new presence had entered. Something warm. Something strange. Hades sighed. So began the newest chapter of the underworld, with beauty descending into death. I should have stayed with Prometheus.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.